Do we have Mr. Wingate on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
We're good to go. Okay, folks, we're going to get started. Good morning. Good morning. This is the regularly scheduled meeting, March 16th, 2023, of the Board of Registration and Elections, Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections. I am wearing a mask because I've been really sick for the last few days, but I do not have COVID, but please excuse the voice and the masking. I'm sparing my colleagues what I've been through for the last few days. Before we get to public comment, let me just please ask first, if everybody could please try not to talk while you're waiting in line, because we're going to start having public comment. Just everybody can just take it down a little bit. Please turn your cell phones off right now. And we're going to try to move things as expeditiously as possible. Thank you all for those who have come down. We'll talk about what's going on in a minute. If you've signed up for public comment, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. We'll give you about 30-second notice that you're coming up on your time. Please wrap up your statement when you get the notice. When time is up, time is up. Before we get to that, we want to approve the agenda. We're going to make a couple of changes to be able to accommodate folks that are here today. I'm going to ask Dr. Ruth to help us with that right now.
Yes, Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adjust the agenda to move new business up before the monthly operations report.
Okay, the motion is to move the operations report to the end, and after the approval of the minutes, we'll start to hear the new business, which is the voter challenges. Is there a second to that? Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none. The agenda is amended. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second? Is there a second? Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The agenda is approved as amended. It's now time for communications and public response. I will call your name, and then I'll call the second person so that you can be ready to speak. Please identify yourself and your address. Lucia Frazier is the first speaker. Jason Frazier is the second speaker.
Good morning, everybody. There's a lot of people here for a challenge today that really didn't have to come here. This process was created by legislation to help clean voter rolls and is actually a good process because it gives the county free labor. By law, counties are required to maintain their voter rolls. Obviously, this was not happening based on the thousands of voter registrations that have been identified by citizens and substantiated by the Board of Registration staff. Obviously, there's no person or system that is doing this maintenance. Obviously, the ERIC system isn't catching even a small fraction of what citizens have found. What's not so obvious is why. Why is there pushback and resentment towards cleaning the voter rolls? This is a bipartisan benefit. It sure feels and looks like the county is against clean voter rolls when the challenge letters are sent with language that makes the error the citizen's fault instead of the county fault or the SOS fault. Whoever typed in the registration info is at fault. Whoever didn't decide to utilize ready available tools, such as the post office database, the driver's license database, to check the accuracy of the entry is at fault. Instead of thanking the citizens who volunteered to identify issues and save taxpayer money, the county is needlessly upsetting people and wasting their time with negative language on the letters and telling them they have to take time out of their day to come here for a simple correction, when all you had to do was make the correction because you already have access to more voter data than any citizen does. Even worse, you didn't even put on the letter that they can just cure the issue by going online and typing the correction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We're not going to do that. Please remain quiet. If you'd like to speak, you can sign up to speak and we'll hear you. But we're not going to respond to every comment, nor will we respond to every comment. Mr. Frazier, you're next, and after Mr. Frazier is Kevin Muldowney.
All right, Jason Frazier, Fulton County resident. I'm going to spend
I'm sorry, I didn't understand a word you just said. Could you identify yourself again?
Can you restart my time then?
Yeah.
Okay, Jason Frazier, Fulton County resident. All right, so today I need to address what's really going on. I'd love to speak on some other things, but clearly there are a lot of people in the room that I believe are misguided. First thing is I did not intend to challenge anyone here today. I located errors in the voter rolls. I submitted those errors. I asked Fulton County Elections, can you please fix these errors? I was given zero response. And then I followed up. If you will not fix these errors, then yes, please consider them a voter challenge. Unfortunately, voter challenges are the only way I can get Fulton County to step up to the plate and clean up the voter rolls. There are thousands of errors in the voter rolls, tens of thousands of duplicate registrations. We both know duplicate registrations lead to double voting, as I have shown you in the past. Yes, I showed you duplicate registrations that led to double voting. Don't give me that look, okay? I am very frustrated here. I am appalled that you mailed all of these people challenge letters. This is embarrassing. These are easy fixes in the system. As my wife just described, you could have gone in the system, you could have looked at these errors and cleaned them up. We know these bad registrations lead to precincts card not being mailed to the right place. People, if it is a long road and you've got Northwest on one side, Southwest on the other, people are voting in the wrong precincts. They're not getting the voter cards. They might have absentee ballots lost. These cause real problems to real people. Not to mention, whenever I have identified 20,000 duplicate registrations, these cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in wasted tax dollars to our citizens. Hundreds of thousands every year. We have one ballot marking device for every 250 people on the rolls. When you're talking numbers this large, this is a tremendous amount of wasted tax dollars to our community. We got to do something better, guys. This is embarrassing. And whenever somebody finds a simple address update, please listen and fix these. Do not harass the public and do not harass me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodison, would you make sure to give a bit of a notice before the ringer goes off? Just like
Morning,
30
guys. I'm
seconds
not sure I
before.
can follow it up really well, but I'll try. Our
And your
basic
name
right,
is, would you give me your name and your
Kevin
address, please?
Muldowney, Milton, Georgia.
Thank you.
Our right to vote is basic, and protection of that right is essential. This body is the steward of that right. Clean voter rolls will not only be a tremendous cost savings for the county, but it will afford bipartisan voter protection as well. Thousands of inaccurate voter records, inaccurate enough to cause an absentee ballot to never arrive, as well as pointing out a simple fix, have been brought to the attention of the registration department, as is evident by what Jason just said. And what was their response? Nothing. And now you choose to follow the letter of the law and send out letters naming the challenger and those affected. Yes, this would have been the correct procedure in a more involved challenge, such as where a voter had moved, but these were pointed out as clerical errors found through the actual Fulton County data. These could have been easily and legally fixed. Said absentee ballot would have arrived safely. In this case, the decision was made to weaponize the law and harass a citizen that was trying to help. In direct contrast to a case where a large number of non-existent voters addressed to an empty lot were deliberately and illegally left on the voter rolls by the
30
BRE.
seconds.
This was after the challenge letter procedure was followed. By the way, the post office sent all those letters back, address and addressee unknown. We desperately need to clean up our voter rolls. Harassing a citizen as legal as trying to help is a waste of county resources. The cry of voter suppression is actually born out of a desperate need for voter protection. Let's actually protect the vote. This is a bipartisan obligation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Christine Probst, and after that, Julie Allen.
Good morning, Christine Probst, Atlanta. Per OCGA 21-2-228A, Fulton Elections has a legal responsibility to maintain our voter rolls. Yet month after month, volunteer citizens, as you've heard, come here to provide evidence that this is not happening. Here are just a summary of what I've reviewed over the last year. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, of voters who have moved and are registered, may have voted, or own property in another state are still able to vote in Georgia. 20,000 duplicate registrations, with more every month. 6,000 registrations with an invalid or fake address or business address. 2,000 registrations with no address. 500 plus voters with a missing date of birth. Hundreds of dead voters who are still active on our rolls, and dozens of registrations with missing names. How is someone allowed to register without a name, without a date of birth, without a valid address? I'd like to know how this happens. And to me, and as I mentioned, thousands of new errors and duplicates every month. So to me, this points to some underlying issues. The registration review process is clearly broken. So validating those registrations is not happening effectively.
30 seconds.
The dashboard is obviously not catching all these errors, and the ERIC system is not effective. Fulton needs to improve the vetting, training, and performance tracking of deputy registrars who may be submitting these invalid registrations. And at an absolute minimum, Fulton should be using a data entry system that validates key fields, right? It should flag it if there's a field that is empty, or it should validate the registration. It should validate that information on entry so you don't have these issues that flow through the system. Keeping our voter rolls clean is a legal requirement. This is not a partisan issue. This is not meant to penalize valid legal voters. There's easy issues or errors that can be resolved here. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Allen is next, and Lakendra Graham is after that.
Good morning, Ms. Woolard and others on the board. I appreciate your listening to the concerns of the community. We're truly grateful.
Could you just identify yourself and where you live, please?
My name is Julie Allen, and I live on 15th Street in the city of Atlanta.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fulton Election Law OCGA 21-2-228A states the Board of Registrars of each county or municipality shall have the right and shall be charged with the duty of examining from time to time the qualifications of each elector of the county or municipality whose name is entered upon the list of electors and shall not be limited or stopped by any action previously taken. It is the law that Fulton maintain their rolls. Eric is to help with this, but the responsibility falls squarely on Fulton County Elections Director Nadine Williams to maintain Fulton County rolls and handle all corrections that arrive on their dashboard or are submitted from the public. If the public, as many of those who have preceded me have stated, if they can find thousands of challenges, it is clear that Fulton is not maintaining their rolls. We must have a registrations process that will check and validate all registrations when added. Eric is not doing the job they were supposed to do, so Fulton County needs to step up and clean their rolls for all of us. We do seek to, I think we all seek to protect the right to vote of all. This is a bipartisan issue that we need to have accurate voting rolls so everyone's right is protected. Duplicate registrations waste taxpayer dollars. Nothing is more bipartisan than saving money and protecting the right to vote. Clean rolls enable everyone that should be on the rolls to vote without issue. Right-sizing the rolls reduces stress on the already overworked election staff. Again, I thank you for the privilege of speaking for you, and I ask that you hear the concerns of the public that have taken their time off work to come to protect the right of our democracy here, and that's the valued right to vote.
Thank you. LaKendra Graham is next, and after that, Maria Gaudio. And for anybody whose name I've mispronounced, I apologize.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm LaKendra Graham, Fulton County resident.
Thank you. Would you put that microphone right in front of your face? Thank you. So we want to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
LaKendra Graham, Fulton County resident. I'm here on behalf of myself. My rights was challenged. I've been staying at the same address for since 2011. The only thing that has changed is the street name. It can't change from Confederate to United, which made my apartment complex change into Trestle Tree Village. Whenever mail comes through, either it can say United or it can say Confederate, I still receive the mail. I just feel like this is a waste of my time and also my kids' time. My kids are doing homeschool, so I feel like it's a waste of my time because I'm here when I have other things to do. I have a job. I have other plans besides coming here stating my opinion and my right to vote because somebody wanted to challenge it. I just feel like everybody should put more into trying to figure out, and if something like that should happen, then someone should put their mind to it or do their job and find out things like that. It's just those minor things that could be changed or could be looked into besides wasting my time and bringing me here. And that'll be all.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming here. I would ask again that we not clap or make any other noise so we can hear from everybody. Appreciate that. Maria Gaudio, and then Sarah Ketchum is after that.
Good morning, Maria Gaudio, Fulton County resident. It has been recently pointed out to me that Fulton County is larger than the 4 smallest states in the Union combined. And if you look at the size of their voters' registration boards, it would be more than 4 times your size too. So I understand that you have a very large job to do. But for the last 2 years, citizens have been helping you to do your job, to show you that voter rolls are not being maintained, they are not correct. Tens of thousands of illegal votes have been placed. And then you publicly reprimand them and spank them? I don't understand why that would be. You should welcome the help. I witnessed the cheating. I witnessed the ballot stuffing of the boxes. I witnessed the ballot stuffing of the trucks, the Dodge vans. I saw that happening, and that just goes away. It doesn't matter to you. I don't understand that. So unless you're going to listen to these people who are bringing you facts and figures and have the documentation to prove their statements, you need to explain to the rest of us why you're not paying attention to them and why it's taken more than 2 years.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Sarah Ketchum is next. And after that, Lori Demarest.
Good morning, Sarah Ketchum, nice Atlanta, Georgia.
Would you mind just putting that microphone up to your mouth so we can hear you? Thank you.
I'm here because my residency was challenged. I moved out of state and then I moved back in time to vote. I have documentation to prove that I live here. I moved out of state and I moved right back. So I don't know if that's where I'm supposed to say this at, but I've heard the mission from some previous folks to clean up the voter rolls, but I don't appreciate being collateral damage and my voter registration being challenged, and the right of my right to vote being taken as collateral damage in this mission that is going on to clean up the voter rolls. I will say, though, in my letter where it is stating that I'm challenged, there were no directions about what I need to bring to this meeting. I called this morning and no one answered the phone to help me out with that process. So I do want to state that for the record, but I don't appreciate being collateral damage in this mission to clean up the voter rolls, but also if you could provide voters in a challenge with what they need to do to resolve this, that would also be helpful as well. That's all.
Thank you. Lori Demarest and then Lauren Waits.
Good morning. Lori Demarest. I live in Fulton County. I volunteer on a voter protection hotline, and it's usually pretty quiet this time of year, but in the last week, I've taken 2 calls from people who received these challenge letters. And the first person who called, it stated in the letter that she was improperly registered at a business address. We looked her up in my voter page. Her address was correct. It's a residential address. I looked her up on the tax rolls, and the tax rolls show that it's zoned as a single-family residence. And so I told her to send that in to the address on the letter, and that was taken care of. If I could look it up that easily and confirm that, in fact, she was not registered at a business address, then the person who was filing these challenges could have taken the time to do that as well and keep this person from having to go through something that was an illegitimate challenge. The other person who called was a 74-year-old woman calling for her 97-year-old mother who had been challenged, who had always voted at that address. We called the number given on the letter, and I want to commend the staff here who made it very easy for her and told her just to find a utility bill and send it in. I can't imagine the amount of work that the staff here is having to go through with 5,000 plus challenges at a single meeting. So I do want to commend the staff, and I understand that a lot of these problems stem from legislation that this body has no control over, legislation by the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren Waits.
Good morning, Lauren Waits, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here today because I knew that the conversation would be so heated, and I want to thank each of the Board of Elections members. I want to thank the staff, and I want to thank our citizens for participating in the process. I'm here to speak up for the process. Many of the issues we're discussing are more appropriately resolved through the Secretary of State's office and the Georgia General Assembly. Each of us has the right to run for those offices. Each of us has the right to serve in those offices. There are many vacant positions in the Department of Elections. I have not decided to take the time to apply for those jobs, but I know that I could, and unless I were willing to, I don't really feel that I'm in a position to believe that I know all the detail. I'm a fan of big data. I understand with a master's in public health the importance of managing 800,000 voter databases, and I do know that there will be errors, and I know that each of you, as well as the staff, are working their darndest to resolve those errors. So mostly I just want to say thank you. I also do want to appreciate some of the colleagues who have gotten up and spoken from an opposite point of view. I have served with one in a very friendly way down at the elections warehouse on paper ballot process. Another gentleman has protected me in a 5K race, for which I was grateful, and I hope that we will continue to be able to work together collegially and constructively. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment. Thank you all for your comments. We're going to move now to approve the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to the minutes of the regular meeting of February 9th or the executive session meeting of February 9th?
Motion to approve the agenda, the minutes, sorry. Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Again, if you're looking at the original agenda, we're moving the monthly operations report to the end, and we're going to move directly into hearing the voter challenges so that we can move as expeditiously as possible. We have a number of challenges from a number of different challengers, and each of the challenges is sort of a entity of its own, so it's going to take us a little minute to get into a groove here. And I'm going to ask our legal counsel to help guide me a little bit in how best to organize that. So if everybody is ready to go on that, are we going to, how should we do this? Call up each of the challengers in turn and then deputize, swear them in?
I think that's the easiest way, and then once that challenger is sworn in, then we can deal with the ways that we've decided to try to expedite the process.
And then, can I just say to the folks who are here for corrections, I think everybody's had an opportunity to be able to make any corrections that you want. And if they're corrected, they can leave if they'd like to, is that correct? And assume that it is taken care of, and they'll get a letter verifying that. But you are welcome to stay, and we will continue on. But I just, in the interest of your time, I want to say thank you for coming, and thank you for making the changes. But like I said, you are welcome to be here. We appreciate you being here, but I didn't want anyone to feel like you had to sit through the meeting if indeed you don't have to. Wait.
I was about to say, maybe we should clarify specifically what they've done, how they can leave, because I'm sure most of the people didn't understand what you just said.
Okay. Yep, we're gonna get to you. Hang on. But we're not gonna yell from the audience. Hang on 1 second.
I think maybe if we explain how they got here, what they were required to do once they got here, what happens when they do what's required when they got here, and then if they can, what will happen after they leave, and if they leave or not. And then I think that'll help people be more secure and feel more comfortable about either staying or going, and knowing that their registration is taken care of.
Okay, I will defer to Ms. Marshall. Just for the record, we received challenges from various challengers, and once those persons list the email or the document they send us as a challenge, we have to treat it as such. So Ms. Marshall will take it from here in regards to what needs to be done today.
Thank you. So if you have already made the correction by filling out a voter registration application, we will process that application. You are not required to stay for the hearing, but you're more than welcome to. We will process the application, and once we do so, we will mail you a precinct card and also a letter just confirming that you were here today and the correction has been made.
Okay.
Indicate what happens if they didn't have to make a correction. Some of them just got notices and there were no corrections needed.
If you did not have to make a correction, we will also mail you a letter of the BRE's decision today, just that you came in, but there will be no further action taken on your voter registration. Yes, so there are several ways that you can make the address change or updates if you need to. We do have paper voter registration applications here today for your use. If you would rather do it online, you can go to mvp.sos.ga.gov, and you're able to do that from your cell phone as well.
All right.
So when we mailed the notice out for the challenge hearing, we did put in the letter that you could make the correction or submit supporting documentation prior to the hearing today.
Right, so on the bottom of the letter, there is an email address and a phone number. Over 5,000 people were challenged, and many of those people emailed us their information. But again, this is not a challenge that was sent by Fulton County. We did not challenge you. These were persons that submitted challenges to addresses or some other minor things. When we receive massive challenges, we have 10 days to respond. Yes, we will make revisions to the way the letter is written, but we have to respond within 10 days when somebody sends us 5,000 names in one email.
Okay, we're going to continue on now to hear the challenges, but what I want to do is that if you're here and you've been challenged and you would like to leave, but you want to provide the documentation that you need, please check in down here and we'll take care of you and you can leave. If you'd like to stay, you'll see more about this process, as we go through it. But I did not want anyone here to stay longer than needed so that they can move through the process. Aaron?
One thing I have a suggestion that may help comfort some ease with some folks. I know a lot of people need to leave. Staff will send somebody up at the top of the stairs right outside the door, if that's okay.
Yep.
Staff can send a staff person, and if you've already done and have any additional questions like the letter or you have to get back, TJ is gonna go? TJ will be upstairs to answer any questions that you may have in order to allow you some of the questions that I know you probably still have because we can see the faces down here.
Mr. Johnson will be upstairs to greet you.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Johnson will be upstairs.
I
to
thought you
greet
meant I was going. I was
No,
like, I am?
Thomas Johnson's heading upstairs.
I know. I caught it at the end.
All right, let's get going. All right, our first challenger is David Hubert. He challenged 277 voters. Mr. Hubert, if you'll come down here so we can swear you in.
Good morning. My name's David Hubert. I'll answer any questions you may have for me.
Okay.
Mr. Hubert, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth? Swear or affirm to tell the truth in the matter that's before you, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Are we now going to ask for anyone that's been challenged by Mr. Hubert in particular to come forward if they'd like to?
Actually, we were going to talk about the disposition that we were going to make as a group rather than have everybody do that, but I'm willing, if anyone's here who's had a challenge raised or been notified the challenge was brought by Mr. Hubert, would you please stand? Okay. If you have a challenge that is based upon your address and your address is correct, or your address needs to just have a simple, I think one person mentioned a street change name, that can be handled by, internally by the staff, and you don't have to stay here and make any other independent presentation. If you'd like to make testimony or make any statement, then we just need to swear you in, but you don't have to. Just because he challenged you doesn't mean the challenge was valid. He just challenged you. We have a process that requires us to notify you, have a hearing, and give you an opportunity to be heard. So if it's correct and he challenged you, you don't have to do anything. If the address needs corrections, they can correct it upstairs and you don't have to sit through this. But those of you who want to speak, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before us is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Okay, I see 3 people. Thank you.
Okay. If y'all would just want to come on down. And then,
You all come on downstairs and line up on the stairwell.
and then should we go ahead and go through this and hear them or hear them first?
Yeah, she's gonna make the recommendation in the report with regards to that, and then you'd have to hear anybody who's here who wants to make a statement.
Okay. But prior to her making the recommendation?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All All right, let's take us through what your findings are.
Just line up on the stairs, so you're not all there together. Just line up right there on the stairs. Yeah.
All right. So, good morning. There were 277 names submitted by Mr. David Hill Hubert. The reason for Mr. Hubert's challenge were these people or voters were possibly moved out of state. So based off of the information provided by Mr. Hubert, we were able to match the records of voters in the state of Georgia to registered voters in other states. What we are recommending today is that the board approve to flag these voters as challenge electors and add a comment of possibly moved out of state, but to allow the voters time to, if they come back in state, which we had someone to say before, that they will correct or update their registration once they return.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah.
Yes, so we are asking, or my recommendation is for the board to approve flagging the voters as challenge electors and giving them time to respond and update their registration if they are still in Georgia.
For 39 voters, is that correct?
So would that put them in pending challenge, in pending status?
There is no pending in Jarvis. So it'll basically just flag them due to the challenge. We're able to add in the memo as possibly moved out of state. And then if, at that time, it will do the same thing as pending and prompt a provisional ballot. But if we have proof or they provide documentation at the time of re-registering or to vote that they still are Georgia residents, then they can update that on the spot.
Okay, is that for 21?
Okay.
I'm not sure, I'm sorry, and I apologize to folks that this seems confusing, but it is confusing, and one of the challenges of the challenge that you will discover is that the General Assembly wrote a law with very little indication as to process or how to handle these challenges in a way that is a little more streamlined than it is. And so we're getting through it the best way we can, but it takes us a little while to find our groove.
So Ms. Williams would like for me to go through each category.
Yes.
All right.
That's what we've done previously, so let's stick with the program.
Yes. So there were 277 names presented. From that list, 21 voters were already in council moved out of state status. 10 voters responded by canceling their Georgia registration. 53 of the voters submitted are registered in other counties. And 3 of the records were administrative updates that needed to be made.
And for for clarity, the 53 that live in other counties, the challenger would have to contact those counties. They're not Fulton County residents, the 53.
Okay.
That is correct. So the board is asked to make a decision or accept the recommendation for a total of 190 of the 277 names presented today, but it will be minus three additional responses if the voters are still Georgia residents.
So you didn't finish the second page. So 39 voters are in active status.
Yes, so 39 are in active status and 151 are in inactive. That's that total of 190.
Okay.
So the 39 would be moved to the challenged elector in Garvis.
Yes, ma'am. And the 151.
The 39 and 151. That's the 190.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, the 39 are currently active, and they'll be listed as challenge if you approved, as moved out of state. The other 151 are inactive, but they will still be listed as challenged because they could possibly have moved out of state. She just separated from active versus inactive. But the decision will be the same to put them as a challenge, flag them as challenged.
All right. So for the purposes of the audience who's listening, and frankly for me too, in terms of the terms, what is the difference between active status and inactive status?
Active status is a voter who is in constant contact with the office, whether by voting or signing a petition. Inactive status is for voters who have not made contact with the office. So 90 of those voters are already in inactive status for potentially being cross-state. So the ERIC process will eventually cancel them. And 61 of those voters are already in inactive status for a national change of address. So that list maintenance is in process as well.
And so people are indicated as in active or inactive status by virtue of the communication and process that we get through the Secretary of State's office.
Yes, ma'am.
So they were already in process of being resolved when we had to go through and
Yes, ma'am,
do
that
this
is
a second
correct.
time? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the motion then would be that we would accept your recommendations
Yes.
as listed here.
On this one.
Now, let me pause for a minute and let the BRE ask any questions that they may want to ask. Dr.
Thank
Ruth?
you. So, Shamira, so this 190, they were already part of your list maintenance?
No, so 39 are in active status, meaning there is no potentially moved out of state notice or anything within their record. But then if you look at the 151, they are in inactive status, meaning there's something already happening in that record. 90 being in regards to potentially moving cross-state, and that's a code we received from the state, and 61 with possible national change of addresses, meaning they changed it with the postal service, but not with our office. So 151.
But that 151 was already flagged as part of our list maintenance within our system, within the department?
Yes,
That's
ma'am,
what-
that is correct.
Okay. Mr. Wingate, I just wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to ask any questions you might have.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just so that there is absolute clarity, if any of these that are challenged for moved out of state and the records that were given along with these challenges are deemed to be correct, in essence, that if a Fulton County voter is found to have moved to Florida and registered to vote in Florida, and my understanding or our understanding, I think, has been, unless something has changed, that given that that voter information is accurate by the documentation given, that voter should be removed from our voter roll. And if that voter happens to move back to Fulton County, Georgia in the future, they would be, like anyone else, required to re-register. Have I missed a point here anywhere?
So in speaking with the SOS, and I have to remember which code section it was, we cannot remove voters from the voter roll without their signature. So being Mr. Hubert used voteref.com as his provided evidence, we did not cancel people as moved out of state based off of the evidence provided.
So in flagging them at whatever inactive or active category that they might be in, for future elections, if that person is or does cast a ballot or attempts to go in to cast a ballot, then they're going to be in that flag. They will be then directed to go do a provisional ballot.
Yes, sir, that is correct. And Mr. Wingate, if they show their Georgia ID and proof of residency at the time of casting the provisional ballot, then we can make that correction. But yes, sir, that is correct. They will be prompt to cast a provisional ballot.
So if they provide proper documentation at that time of attempting to vote, then what you'll do is then allow them to vote regularly and then take that information and update the voter database.
They will have to cast a provisional ballot, and then the research
Okay.
will be done outside the precinct within our office once the provisional ballots are received. So they will not be allowed to go in the precinct, be prompted to provide the change, and then it'll be corrected on the spot. They will still have to provide a provisional ballot. We will conduct the necessary research and review the supporting documentation, because you know they have that 3 days to respond, and then it will be updated and their provisional will be counted.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, so shall we let the,
Want to hear from the people who came in opposition to the challenge.
why don't you just come up one at a time and identify yourself? Okay.
You'll be able to do that at the end, Mr. Hubert, as the challenger.
Thanks.
Hi, would you just give us your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Ashley Coonan. I'm a DeKalb County resident, moved recently from Fulton County. I know this is a bit of a mess for everyone, especially someone in my situation. I recently spent a short amount of time out of state and updated my mailing address. I did not register out of state. I had never intended to register out of state. And so I think maybe differentiating between mailing address and voter registration is also an important point here. Thank you.
Thank you. And were you able to make the necessary corrections? You're now registered in DeKalb, is that correct?
My voter registration was already corrected before I received the challenge notice. I have been very aggressive about keeping that correct and up to date, so I'm not sure what information is being challenged because of the chain. My update happened before the challenge letter was dated. So I'm not sure is the short answer.
Do we need to do anything to just make sure she's all taken care of?
Yes, I will have them to look you up to verify and ensure that you are registered in DeKalb County.
Yes, we did that before the meeting, and I believe
Okay.
that is the case.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
very
coming down, and thank you for speaking. Next, please.
Hello again. I too moved for a short stint of time outside of Georgia and then moved back in time. And I checked before the last election, I checked online and my information was there. And then when I called, they said that I called and they also said that I was cleared to vote as well. So I don't know what documentation, I would have left, but I don't know what you need as proof before I left, or because it wasn't as simple as an address change. It was just the challenge was moved out of state. That's all it said. So I don't know. I didn't feel comfortable leaving without knowing what you needed for me to make sure that I can still vote. That's also not clear in this process. Is if I don't show up, does that mean I don't have voting rights anymore? Like that wasn't exactly clear. That's just what I assumed. So that's all.
Well, just for your information, at the conclusion of all of the day and the hearings, each person that has been challenged would get a letter notifying them of the disposition of the challenge. So you would hear from us again.
Okay.
If you want to go upstairs and talk to one of these gentlemen up there, they will just make sure that everything is set for you so
Okay.
that you don't have to be bothered with this again. But we appreciate you coming down.
Okay. Thank you all.
Yep. Did you
Madam Chair, I just have one question for Ms. Marshall. This particular voter, since she has always been, for election purposes, a Fulton County resident, but she was challenged because she had another address listed in another state, she doesn't need to vote provisionally. So I'm just trying to make certain that when they are checking her records, that it just stays what it is, so that there is no change to that.
Yes, so
I don't know where it is in this number. I don't know if she's an active voter that have been reflected as gone to another state, or is she in the Secretary of State's data as being cross-state? But I just want to make certain that when the board votes to make these decisions, that the numbers are adjusted. So if she's in these numbers and that's an error, then we need to
I will have to look at the Excel file to see what her actual category is, but yes, she is included in this report. I actually spoke with her this morning, and I was able to, and I remember verifying, she did register to vote in another state. So I would just like to make a comment for the public. When you move out of state or you register to vote in another state and you return, you just have to cancel the registration in the other state. So I was able to verify that she had registered in another state, but she says she's back in Georgia now. We will not flag her record or cancel it or anything, but I will have to see where she falls within this because I don't have the Excel files with me.
Thank you.
You're Sarah Ketchum, right? Hang on one second. Doing that, I'm sorry, would you please come forward and state your name and your address and make your comment, please?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Alexia Rodriguez. I am a DeKalb County resident, and I've been a DeKalb County resident since 2020, and I've never been a Fulton County resident. Some may be asking themselves, why is a DeKalb County resident here? And I asked myself the same thing when I received the notice from Fulton County. Even more so, knowing that I was not provided any evidence to which I would be responding to that notice with. Nor was I given any information on what documents I could or should provide in response to this notice. That being said, I immediately sought guidance. When I called DeKalb County about this issue, I was told to resolve the issue here with Fulton County. And I emailed and called Fulton County multiple times in order to resolve this issue, and I received no response. I worked with a family member who is an attorney who helped me pull together a package of evidence to support my right to be registered to vote in Georgia. I also contacted a third party, the Georgia ACLU, for guidance on how I should expect to resolve this challenge. They actually informed me that there is no Alexia Rodriguez registered to vote in Fulton County. I want to say that I am lucky to have this family member who understands the legal system. And I'm lucky that I can take time off work to be here today in order to respond to this challenge. All this being said, if I could be provided with some guidance on the next steps of how to resolve this notice, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You are going to fall in the category of one of the voters that were challenged by Mr. Hubert, who doesn't live in Fulton County. There's 53 of those voters that are in a similar situation with you. I can't use the word challenge because it's got a technical meaning in this particular instance, but one of the problems with this law is that we receive these challenges en masse, and then it is up for us to sort out what's accurate, what's not accurate, and then all of the various segmentations of what the issues might be. It's not a well-drawn law. It has caused complications in counties across the state, and it has inconvenienced thousands of individuals like yourself. And for that, we apologize, even though we had nothing to do with writing the law. We do want our roles to be as accurate as they possibly can be, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about that right now. But at this moment, I don't believe there is anything additional you need to do with us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And can we provide her information to just reassure her that her registration in DeKalb County is accurate, or does she have to check that with DeKalb?
Yeah, they can check it upstairs for you.
So if you would
verify.
like that, just to have them verify that your voter registration is as you think it is, and I believe that it is. Again, we apologize. We're stuck with a process that we can't quite get the General Assembly to pay attention to. So that might be the next stop for anybody who really wants to engage in this, is to talk to your member of the General Assembly and ask them to really talk to board members and talk to election officials and talk to citizens about the difficulties this has has made for all of us. But thank you so much for coming here. We really appreciate your comment and that you took the time to do that.
May I make
Thank you very much.
a comment, please?
Excuse me?
Yes, may I make a comment? I'm sorry. Yes, we do apologize, and we do recognize that the letter was vague, and we will be revising the letter. We do have to, like I said, we do have to notify the voters within 10 days. When we do get these mass challenges, we will work on revising the letter to make it very clear what has to be done for the voters. So we do apologize for the format of the letter. We are revising that to make it clear for people, but we do have to send it out, but just making sure that everybody has more information.
May I also state that the statute does state that the letter should be sent to the voter's address on their voter registration, and mine was not. So, thank you.
Can I just ask, how did you receive the letter then?
It was forwarded to me
Okay.
from the mail forwarding system. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, did Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I have a staff question. So in this instance, where this young lady has never registered, Ms. Rodriguez, never registered in Fulton County. She's registered in DeKalb County. He submits a challenge to Fulton County. Is there no requirement for the challenger to verify whether or not this person is even registered in Fulton County? Because in my eyes, if they're simply using, and I could be wrong, you can correct me and tell me what you're using later, but if they're simply using a change of address form, people have the same name all the time. And obviously, there's possibly an Alexia Rodriguez that lives in Fulton and one that lives in DeKalb. And the one that seems like the one that lived in Fulton moved, but the one in DeKalb did not. But she's being challenged in Fulton. So is there some burden on the challenger's part to verify that they're actually challenging the right person? Or when they submit these thousands of names, it's totally on the local elections board to do the research to figure out if it's a Fulton resident or a DeKalb resident?
That's the issue that we run into as a department because of the legislation. When we receive these mass challenges of 5,000 names or 200 names at one time, we have to respond within 10 days. So like I said, we'll revise the letter to let you know we're going to research it. The burden of proof does fall upon the challenger, but we have to have that time to research and also respond to you all at the same time. So now we'll revise the letter so to let you know that we're researching whatever this challenger submitted. But the burden of proof is on the challenger, but we need to have time to research that and also do our regular work duties at the same time, not jeopardize upcoming elections. But like I said, the letter will make that clear to voters to say that your letter should have said, we received the challenge in your name, we're currently reviewing it, and please contact our office to get this information. But unfortunately, we do have to respond to these challenges.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down. And please do ask our staff to verify things for you just so you can go home feeling like you've resolved the issue. Okay, did you want to speak before we take our vote? Okay. I don't think your microphone's on.
Thank you. As I understood, what she just said is that she was forwarded a letter from a Fulton County address to the cab so she could respond here. So that's just point one. Point two is I have never, in all my challenges, more than 1,000 here, ever challenged anybody based on their address. My challenges have always been based on their registered to vote in another state. I do not even have any DeKalb County records. All of my records are coming from the Secretary of State and the names and addresses that are on the list from the Secretary of State. And all I do is go check to see if they're registered in another state. If they are, I file a challenge, and show proof that they have registered in another state. So I can't address, and we've never, of all the ones I've done it, ever had anybody come from DeKalb and say, I'm challenging somebody that never lived in Fulton County. Now, of course, any mistake could be made, but I don't know exactly how it would happen. But we are very careful, very intentional on what we're trying to do here. And I like the process because it shows if a mistake was made, it'll show us what the mistake was made so that we won't repeat it. So it seems to me the system's working. Now, I've never had any of my challenges disallowed for a wrong county.
Well, you're going to
And
have
I've
probably
never challenged anyone based on an address.
You're probably going to have 53 of them in the wrong county this time, so. All right. Yes.
So, couple things. You said that this has never happened, but sometimes people may not come. People may not have the ability to show up to the meeting, and they may see the letter or not really realize what the full ramifications of receiving that letter is. Obviously, it's happening because we have a young lady that just stood next to you to say that it is happening. The other two, I can kind of figure out what happened, but in her particular case, which I feel like probably happens more often than not, because you have 53 people on your list that fall in that category. There are 53 people on this list that are registered in other counties. So we're not looking totally at out-of-state people. 53 people are simply one county over. So that means that for 53 people, you didn't check to see if they were registered anywhere else. And then how is this going to happen? If I'm not correct, if I'm incorrect, you said you weren't registered in Fulton County, ever registered in Fulton County, correct? She's never been registered in Fulton County, so that leads me to believe there's somebody else with her same name that may have been registered in Fulton County that may have moved. So in going through the list, you come across one person that moved and you found this other person. Maybe the post office thought that she was it, but she's never been registered in Fulton County. Hold on, sir. She's never been registered in Fulton County. And now she's pulled into this. So all I'm saying is this process is not working. I bet you if I ask these people over here to raise their hands who really believe this process is working, most of them will raise their hand. None of them will raise their hand because they might not believe that it's actually, I don't believe that it's working. So, but we have a differing of opinion. But I just want to make that point that this is happening more times than you may realize that it's happening.
All right. So, you ready to go?
May I respond to that?
Yes, quickly, please.
Someone may have registered her in Fulton County. It's another possibility. And this is the records, this is what we are trying to discover. So if she says she's never been registered in Fulton County, unless the Secretary of State made an error or somehow I made an error, this name should never have been submitted as a challenge.
But yet it was. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you for your comments. All right, let's go through what we have here. We've got 277 voters challenged. I think what I would like to say in summary, and again, this is very complicated, but staff, correct me if I'm wrong. 151 of those 277 voters were already designated to be removed, right? Am I using the right term?
That's correct.
39 of them we're going to flag because maybe they have moved. 3 of them were administrative updates, duplications, or missing information. We're going to fix that. 53 of them were not appropriate challenges because they are people who live in different states. 10 of counties, thank you. 10 of them responded to the challenge and canceled their registration as we had hoped that they would, and we appreciate that. And 21 of them were already canceled because they have been moved out of the state. So in fact, very few of these actual things are changes to what was already part of our process. And I only mention that because people seem to buy into the notion that we're not working on our list or we're not addressing them. And just because people are challenging things doesn't mean that they're not appropriately reviewed or dealt with. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. Is there any other question relative to this particular set of challenges, Dr. Ruth?
Yes, one last question.
Okay.
Shamira, out of the 151, none of those received a challenge letter. Is that correct? On the second page, the 151 that were already in inactive status.
We did mail them a challenge letter to their new address or their potential out-of-state address as well. So they did receive a letter. Everyone received a letter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion? Mr. Wingate.
Let me, following Dr. Ruth's question, was there any response from those letters that you mailed to those voters?
Out of the 277 letters mailed, 10 people responded by canceling their Georgia registration.
Okay, so you are getting response and activity. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ready to go? Is there a motion?
Motion to follow the suggestion that we move 39 voters to being flagged as challenged electors, and 151, the other 151 also being flagged as challenged electors.
I'm not sure that's the motion we're going to make.
Nope.
No, we're going to make a motion to follow the recommendations with regard to the staff because it's more than just
Or
those
all
numbers.
of the voters.
Okay.
Now, let me ask real quickly, because I think I'm hearing some variance. Is it flagging or is it removing?
We don't have the ability to remove, we've said this before, any voter without their consent unless we find that we've notified them, given an opportunity to be heard, and with regard to any type of thing associated with their, I think the category of things that we've dealt with was when they have incorrect addresses that we can confirm. The fact that there is an allegation that they live in another state does not give us the right to remove them from our voting rolls until they have said, move me. But what we do is place them in a challenge state that ends up allowing them to only vote when they show up with a provisional ballot and provide information with regard to their actual residency. The Secretary of State's office will be looking at these, and over a period of time of inactivity, these folks can be removed from the voter rolls, but we don't remove them.
Do we know what is that time period that you're referencing from the SOS?
2 federal elections.
It's 2 federal election cycles.
So it's the same, it would fundamentally be the same verbiage as if a voter has been placed on our inactive roll.
That's correct. Inactive and challenged, which means that the fact that they're inactive alone doesn't require them to vote with a provisional ballot, but the fact that they're inactive and challenged would make them have to vote with a provisional ballot.
Well, if an inactive, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if an inactive voter now comes in to attempt to vote, that has to be done provisionally.
If they have been flagged as challenged. But as Ms. Patrice said, if they are a regular inactive voter, then they are not being asked to cast a provisional ballot. Only if they are in inactive status and flagged as a challenged elector, then they'll have to do the provisional ballot.
Okay, let me ask this question, then hopefully I can shut up. Is the department maintaining a ready list or database of every voter that's going through this process that in fact is being so-called flagged? And is that a report or a Excel spreadsheet or whatever that someone can get to, in fact, verify after an election as to what transpired, if in fact any one of those voters did come in to vote or tried to vote by mail?
So to answer your question, yes, sir, the department, we are keeping comprehensive Excel files, but we will also say that since the challenge process came about with Jarvis, our new system, there is a
Right.
challenge elector designation tile. So it keeps track of everyone that we flag as challenge. So we can hit that tile, watch that number at any time, go on the list, and as people respond, we could pull them off the list.
Does the SOS also maintain that same exact file from us and other counties?
Yes, sir, that is correct. It's on the state registrar website, portal, Jarvis. It's on every county's dashboard.
Now, okay, well, I'm sure you get into it, but I'm assuming with the this new platform that the SOS has just recently implemented that's named Jarvis, that it sounds like that you all are still continuing to work to, in fact, synchronize and in essence, catch up and do a lot of file cleansing. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is. We actually have a short presentation in regards to that, if we
Okay.
have time to do so today. And I
Yeah.
also sent you a memo in regards to that a few days
Right.
ago.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, I'm not, this audience is not all familiar with that, but yes, I'm glad that was going to be my next question, my last question, hopefully, of this, that you were going to make a short presentation on what your action plan and process is going forward.
Yes, sir.
Yep,
Okay.
okay. So can we?
Thank you.
Go
In
ahead.
regards to the motion, my motion is for the board to follow the recommendation of the registration department on David Hubert's challenges.
Properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hubert. Appreciate it.
Can I have one further comment? Short.
Rather not, but go ahead, make it short.
The vote has concluded this
Oh,
particular
yeah.
matter. You have to bring it.
Yeah, sorry, no further discussion after the vote's concluded. Thank you. All right, what's the next one?
The next one we will have here is Jason Frazier for business addresses.
Okay, we've got several pages. How about this? Can we do Mr. Schmitz challenge next, please? Okay. Why don't we do that? Huh? Yeah. Okay. Is that okay, everybody? We're going to do Mr. Schmitz challenge next.
Yeah.
Dr. Ruth, you okay with that? You're looking up.
Yes, it's Mr. Smith here.
I'm assuming Mr. Schmitz is here? Not here? Warren Schmitz? Not here. Okay. In the case of the challenger not being here, do we disregard the challenge?
Are there any voters who received notifications about a challenge being submitted by Warren Schmitz present in the audience?
Okay. So is the motion then to dismiss the challenge?
That is up to the board discretion. Did the staff hear anything or receive any communication from Mr. Schmitz at all?
No, we notify him as we notify the other challengers.
Then, yes.
Okay.
If it was in a
Hold it
court,
or
I'd say
deny it?
this.
Which one?
You said what?
Do we have to hold it or deny it or just move on?
No, we do not have to hold it. If you were in a court, we'd say dismiss for want of prosecution, but he's not here.
I like
I
the phrase.
would just say, just deny it.
Okay.
Motion
To deny. No.
Is there a
I second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to Mr. Frazier. And if you would just, you've given us, Mr. Frazier, will you come down? Are you here? We have two two sections, so would you just tell us, are we dealing with the one that has 1,001 names or 4,000?
1,001 for
Okay.
business address.
Thank you.
For that one. Sorry.
We're doing this one?
Yeah, would you please swear him in, please?
Good morning, Mr. Frazier. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Are there any other challenged voters who are in attendance who want to speak with regard to this proceeding? Thank you. That's one. Please stand up and raise your right hands as well. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 7 voters. Thank you. You may be seated.
All right. Remind me again of how we're doing this in sequence. Go ahead, and Mr. Frazier, you want to
That's right.
introduce us to this particular set of challenges?
What he actually would do, well, actually what you have been doing is to allow the staff to make the recommendations with regard to the, basically a report of what they've done with regard to the challenges, and then you allow Mr. Frazier to respond to the report from the staff.
Okay, go ahead.
All righty. So Mr. Frazier submitted a total of 1,001 names as potentially being registered at business addresses. Of those voters, 1 voter is in canceled deceased status. 21 of those voters are registered in another county, so he'll have to submit those to the appropriate county. 879 of those voters are in active status, and 100 of the voters are in inactive status. The recommendation today is for 979 voters to be flagged as challenge electors. And adding a note of possibly being registered at business addresses. But we will also send them a letter and a voter registration application attached to the board's decision today.
Okay, I'm confused. The 979 voters are...
879.
No, 900.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were just pointing to
Yeah,
one thing.
The 979 voters is, you're recommending to put into challenge status.
So I do see a typo under the registrar recommendations. It's for the BRE to approve flagging these voters as a challenge elector and adding a note of being possibly registered at a business address instead of moved out of state.
Oh.
So we tried to make it, break the report down, so the ones that you have to make the decision on are listed under the gray area, so that's a total of 979. The 2 at the top, they were basically removed from the challenge.
Okay.
So do we have to make a motion to remove them from the challenge?
In the examples before you, unlike the previous one died, so that the person doesn't even need to be challenged. If that person was deceased, and there will be already, that's what that says. And then the 21 were not in our county, so the challenge isn't valid for us anyway.
But we don't need to take a particular action relative to that?
You know, I just would rather just move to take the recommendations of the registration department, which includes all those, the one that's deceased, the 21 that reside in the other counties,
Okay.
because they're not making a change to our database, but the ones that are changing our database are the 979, but since they are all a part of the total package that was submitted, by following these recommendations, we cover everybody.
Okay. All right. Let's hear any questions from the BRE relative to the
Well,
recommendations.
hold it, he gets a chance to make his presentation with regard to the information.
Oh, okay. I was just going to let them ask questions relative
No,
to it. Go
generally
ahead,
the
Mr. Frazier.
staff and him.
Go ahead.
My only question on this is, I'm surprised that 21 people are in other counties. I see how one person could have died during this process. I mean, that happens. But I am only looking at a Fulton County voter roll as given to me from Secretary of State. So I'm not sure how that happened unless those people moved between the time that I got the roll by the time this submission process went. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but hopefully this time you can tell me which individual people So that way I don't see this as an issue in the future. I don't want to submit the same person twice, but if you give me no granularity besides 971 accepted and what, 32 people denied, I don't know who is who. So giving me some sort of feedback would help this entire process, and then we can have a better process. I want to work together. I want this to be collaborative. That's
Okay. Other comments from the board?
Yeah, so the challenge is based on the voter being registered at a business address, a UPS of some sort, versus a residential address, correct?
Yes.
For the 879. Now, you've communicated to them, they've received a challenge letter, correct? And have we heard back from them as far as giving them the opportunity to correct their registration?
We have couple people here today that I saw, but unlike the other challenges, we didn't receive any responses to this one. And I will say that we usually receive less responses in regards to the business because people have been registered there, for so long, and then they also have like other situations. But we don't have any responses to this one.
And what was the letter, what did the letter say, for their challenge, the reason for their challenge? Was it just because they were invalid address, or did you say?
It said business address.
Did we provide in the letter stating that the law requires them to have a residential address? Was that stated?
Not in the challenge letter that we initially sent out, but it is in the updated version that Ms. Williams spoke about.
Okay, that they will receive.
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
great, thank you.
All right, should we hear from the folks who are here?
Yes.
Challenged?
Unless you have Mr. Aaron, Mr. Johnson, unless you had a question about the staff.
So have we distinguished between people who use, and I'm just making sure, is a distinction between people who use a business address as their mailing address, or all of these are actually registered there?
Residential. So we did verify. They are registered at business addresses as their residential, but there was actually a lady here today. I don't see her in the crowd, but she said she is the manager at the public storage, and the public storage has a house attached for the manager. So that's something that I didn't know, but the address was listed as her residential.
So for clarification, all of these people are registered to vote at a business address, and it's not just an instance where they have their mailing address and they're registered somewhere else?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Well, we've got a bunch of folks who want to speak to that. So if you were part of this challenge relative to you being registered at a business address and you'd like to come down and speak to us, we'd like to hear from you.
There are two batches of these.
There's two batches of challenges, so you would have said on your letter that you were registered at a business address. We'll let you speak at the next one if that isn't your circumstance. Come ahead.
Not for 30.
There's some kind of. Okay, come forward, ma'am. Just if you would tell us your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Heather Jenkins, and my address is in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the victim of domestic violence, a survivor of domestic violence, and I had taken extraordinary lengths to try to protect myself and not keep my address public. I was given sort of unsound advice to just register at a P.O. box, and that would be sufficient. I understand that I need to file out a vote safe application, which I will be filing to take care of the situation. But I did want to raise that my letter was dated March 11th, and I didn't actually receive it until yesterday. at about 3:30 in the afternoon. So I know that, things are kind of crazy, but it just didn't seem like quite enough notice. I mean, luckily I was able to get here, but I don't know if there's any other people that might not even know that they have something in the mail, so just raising that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You are not the first person that's come here with the same concerns about wanting to be protective of your location. And unfortunately, that we're hearing that a little bit too often, but thank you for coming down. And again, we have to send notification within 10, and schedule a hearing within 10 days of receiving the note. And so again, it's one of these problems that we have with this law is it's not treating you fairly, it's not treating us fairly, it's not facilitating the process other than putting us all under a deadline that makes us have to be somewhat rough about our handling.
Yep,
But
completely understand, and maybe we can find some folks to help us change and give more time to people.
yeah, thank you. And thank you for correcting the situation so that we can make sure that you're all taken care of.
Yes, thank you.
You can file your application right here. You don't have to do anything else, just right at
Right
the top.
at the top of the stairs. They'll take care of you. Mm-hmm. If you would just say your name and your address, please.
Yes, good morning. I was not sworn in, so I may need to do that first.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, being honest. Yes, thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Pamela Palmer. I live in Fulton County in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a attorney barred with the state of Georgia. I received a voter challenge letter that was dated February 16th of 2023, stating that my residency was being challenged due to a business/invalid address. I have lived in Fulton County since 2013, and I have lived at my address since February of 2021 in Fulton County. The address that my challenge letter was sent to is an accurate address. It is my townhome community that I live in. And so receiving this letter was a bit disconcerting, I would say, because, I value my right to vote. It's very important to me. One thing that was troubling about the letter, which I realize is going to be amended going forward, it states here that you are hereby requested to appear before the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections and defend why the challenge to your right to vote should not be sustained. This language places the burden upon the voter to demonstrate why the right should not be sustained and makes it sound like there's a presumption that the challenge is valid. And particularly in my situation, it was simply not. I did contact voter protection concerning this matter. My address was able to be verified. I did submit documentation prior to the hearing concerning my address, but it's simply not a business address. And I feel like this challenge was done in a very frivolous way when the information could have simply been checked on the Fulton County tax, I think it's the tax assessor's website. It says that it's a single-family unit townhome. I live between two other townhomes right off of Lenox Road. So I just wanted to come and make that known. I think it's critical that the letter that is being sent out to voters advises them of what they are to do specifically in responding to these challenges. Most people will not go online and look at the statute to understand how it works. It may be even helpful to provide some sort of attachment or information or link to the statute and what they need to do in response. And so that's my suggestion, because if it takes just a short period of time, a couple of minutes to show that it's not a business address, it's a residential address, I think that there has to be some sort of process
so that it's done and so that the time of taxpayers and valid voters is not wasted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming down.
Madam Chair, I think we might be neighbors because I also received, my family received a challenge letter as well. My husband, my son, and myself. So just so we're all clear, you know, no one is protected in this situation, and your recommendations are very valid. My husband was livid when he received that challenge letter, as was I. And I think we are going to hear later, if you would stay, I hope you have time, I don't know if you do, during the operations report, the department is going to provide some details about processes in the way to handle these challenges going forward. And in my opinion, we never should have received a challenge letter.
Yes, I will stay. I do have hours to bill.
Yeah,
but I will stay so that I can get that information. So thank you.
This would be available online after the fact, right? She doesn't.
Okay.
We'd love to
Yes,
have you
we have a
stay, but
report.
I want to be respectful of your
Okay.
time and say that you can see this, you know,
On the Fulton TV.
on the Fulton TV
On
website.
YouTube.
Or online, at fultonga.gov, it's on there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But you're welcome to stay. Just wanted to let you know there's a way to find it.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add something. You're correct about the burden of responsibility is actually on the challenger in this statute, but what I wanted to make known publicly is that this process is so new that this is like the third round of letters that we've sent out, only the third, and we're getting a better and better with an undefined process. No previous guide in the country on how to deal with this, and so the staff is doing the best they can, and as we evolve, we'll keep all of the comments that you made and others have made about the letters in sight, but we were trying to just get them out, and the advice that they were given was the best that they had at the time. So I just want everybody to know that we're doing something that was not done before. Thanks.
Thank you. More troubling than that is every county's doing it on their own, and there's 159 counties. So if you were to watch this process in any given county, it's not necessarily true that the things would be in sync with each other. Okay, questions, comments? Oh, what?
I was just making sure I saw a bunch of people standing.
I think they're the next group.
Oh, next section.
Okay, I think we'll facilitate things by moving it along for them, yep.
Okay, so y'all know I gotta ask, right? So, Dr. Ruth was challenged? She,
You didn't know that? You
I
didn't
did not
this?
know that.
Oh,
Girl, you know I would have been all over that if I knew that, but, so, let me get this straight. These challengers who have said that they are checking their challenges challenged a sitting board member. And there was no red flag to say, wait, that's Dr. Ruth and her whole family. Let me check this address just to be sure. So, and I'm not talking about staff, of course it rolls down, but as a challenger, I'm going to challenge, and I pray to God one day I get challenged, but
Oh, you will.
I know I will, I'm so ready for it. But as a board member who probably has most things in order, or if I come to this meeting every month, I could just pull you to the side and say, hey, Dr. Ruth, I noticed that you're on the challenge list. Just some type of verification so these people could be billing hours, could be working with their students, could be doing all the things that they need to do instead of coming here. But no, I did not know that.
We're going to allow you to speak at length about that, but what I'd like to do is keep it moving because we do have people in the audience that have their own cases that they want to hear. So is there anything relative to the recommendations of the staff on this challenge of 1,001 names by Jason Frazier that we need to discuss before hearing a motion? All right, is there a motion?
And do I get a rebuttal, or was that it? Just, 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
The only comment I've got is I hope And I hope later today we hear about a process that will screen applicants that if they're at a business address, that gets checked before they're ever registered. People can be notified that, hey, this is a business address. Please register at a residential address, as I don't want to be doing this, as I've said before, and I hope the process can be improved. And I don't want to jump the gun, but on Kathleen's, we'll address that one, but I didn't
Dr.
realize
Ruth.
that I'm sorry, Dr. Ruth. I didn't realize I had challenged her at the time. She was on the list. Treat everyone the same, but had I have known somebody, I would have absolutely reached out. So that was, but the data showed, I mean, her street name was different. The tax record showed a different item than what was on the voter rolls. So there was substantial evidence stating that there could be a problem. And I did ask, can you guys please correct these? That didn't happen. The challenge letter went out. And again, when you say challenge letter has to go out within 10 days, at least some of these challenge letters didn't go out for a month. So during that month that you were in violation of the law, things could have been corrected, but they weren't. So during that time, I mean, it feels like you're picking and choosing when to follow the law. If you've got a month to send these letters, please fix them then. Please allow me to send you a notice, hey, these might be an issue. You check them. If I disagree, then do a challenge. I don't want to do a challenge as primary path. I don't think that's good for anyone, any of us. That should not be the primary path. So
Okay.
please work with me.
All right. Do we have a motion on the recommendations of the staff relative to these challenges?
I make a motion to follow the staff's recommendation for the challenges, 1,101 challenges from Jason Frazier.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please.
The number's incorrect.
Sorry?
You said 1,001.
That's right.
Is it?
Yeah, that's a total
Bunch,
number.
that's the bunch we discussed.
Yep. All right, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion carries. All right, next.
The final challenge that you'll hear today is in regards to invalid addresses. Mr. Frazier submitted a total of 4,000 names. Of those 4,000 names, 1 voter is deceased, 33 voters are registered in another county, 42 voters responded by updating their residential address, 291 of those addresses were found to be valid, 2,910 voters are in active status, and 723 voters are in inactive status.
Okay, question. I'm sorry, were you going to say something? Okay. Any questions relative to these from the staff, from the board?
Just have a correction I wanted to suggest. On the second page, the notation is it moved out of state?
Yes, it's the same, thank you. There's a correction for the BRE to approve flagging the voters as a challenged elector and adding the note of an invalid address.
And is that for which set of numbers? Which set?
The 2 on the back page.
Both.
Those are
Just the-
invalid addresses.
No, it's not, they are invalid. It's just that the challenge status needs to be corrected because the notation was saying, reflected as being possibly moved out of state, and it should say possibly invalid address.
Okay.
So when it pulls up as a challenge, that will be the indication of what the challenge was. Other questions from the board? We have people in the audience who wanted to speak to this that came up that received challenge notifications. If you would come up and let us swear you in, we'd be happy to hear from you now. And thank you for your patience.
And as they're coming, Shamir, these are UPS, are these similar in that they are registered at businesses?
No,
Or
ma'am.
There's a discrepancy with the NCOA.
There is a discrepancy with their residential
With their
address.
residential address, and, okay, great.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're actually in this batch.
Yeah. Okay. Would you please swear these folks in?
Many of you were already here because I did a head count. Is anyone here who was not here at the time I swore in everybody? Just one person, that's right. That's why I was on my count. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give us will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to just come up, like, sort of one at a time, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Good morning. My name is Craig Young. I live in Alpharetta, Georgia. I'm here because the address on my registration was somehow modified from North Pine Drive to North Pine Drive Drive. I received the notice on February 28th. I immediately called the number. First of all, the number was disconnected. Eventually, I found another number where somebody said I really had to be here in person in order to assert my right to vote. I continued by updating my profile on the My Voter page. As of this morning, the data is still not updated. I sent multiple emails to the email address that is on the letter that I received. They showed me that the emails were in their inbox, read, not responded to. I did further digging on the Secretary of State website, and I found that I cast a vote on October 29th, 2021, and that had my proper address on it. When I voted again in 2022, however, in November, my address was wrong. I further looked through the data and found that everybody on my street's address was wrong. I further looked through the data and found that when you search through in the 2020 election voter rolls for obvious mistakes where there's something like drive, drive, or street, street, you come up with thousands of voters in this situation, which I think Mr. Frazier is submitting to you for challenges and getting all of us to waste our time out here. So that's about all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And you've had the opportunity to speak with them and make sure it's finally resolved for you?
The data still doesn't show correctly on MVP, but they say that it is correct now.
Okay.
But for other people, I have seen that it updates more readily from sending an email. I'm a little bit puzzled why all of my emails that I've sent to the voter registration email address do not get any response. It's very frustrating.
Yep, okay. All right, next, please.
Excuse me, I'm Sergeant John Egbert. I'm here as a Fulton County resident. I was challenged by Jason Frazier. I do have a question. If the burden of proof is on the challenger, none of the people being challenged here who have appeared have heard any evidence against them so far. Can that happen?
The evidence was submitted by the challenger in a package of information that had a summary of what the basis for the challenge was and had a list of addresses, which is all the evidence that has been submitted on any of these allegations.
Okay. I just want to point out, as a investigator of 15 years, in order to verify that someone's identity is the same as a name on a roll somewhere in another state, perhaps, we have to do a lot more than just match a first name and last name. I can tell you that there, with any given name, there are multiple people with that name. So from what I have heard so far from these challengers, what they are submitting does not even reach a preponderance of the evidence for most of these cases. However, having said that, I'm here because my address was challenged as an invalid address, actually startlingly similar to the defendant up here before me. I live on Boulevard Drive. My address has been correct in the registration rolls for years. I've lived there for 12 years, I think. For some reason, sometime before the last election, so I think in 2022, my wife checked her registration and noticed that our registration address had been changed from Boulevard Drive, from our number, 1086 Boulevard Drive, to 1086 Boulevard, which is obviously not a correct address. It seems like there was some sort of data cleaning that happened in the address rolls at some point that tried to rectify what it thought was incorrect addresses. I don't know what happened there, but I assure you Boulevard Drive is a correct address, and my mailing address is correct. It's 1086 Boulevard Drive. I'm currently registered as 1086 Boulevard because that was changed by someone, not me. My wife corrected hers, and her correction went through and now is correct. I corrected mine back in October. I think it was correct by the time the election occurred, but when I got this notice I checked it again, and it was back to being the Boulevard. So when I received this notice, I went back on the site and recorrected again, so hopefully I'm in one of the 248 or however many people that it's been corrected. I mainly wanted to stay to bear witness to this man dishonoring himself. But I just wanted to add that in almost all of these cases that you're going to find, judging from the defendant in front of me and the other people who live on my address where the same thing happened to them, it is clear that a clerical error occurred if you compare the mailing address to the actual street address. The only reason we're still here is because this is a bad faith challenge. This man is trying to suppress votes, and he's happy to suppress as many as he can for any reason he can. So thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Are we able to give him with some certainty that his address has been fixed?
Yes.
Sir, if you would just make sure you check with these folks up there to verify everything's good. Okay, next up.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Wayne Golisov. I live in Alpharetta, Georgia. Similar to the sergeant, I think that there was a clerical error done when I received my notice. I called the phone number. I spoke to a gal, and she squared me away. I emailed in correct documentation, and I received an email back. But my question is, and it appears to be correct, my question is how did I get here? What is the process Mr. Frazier is using to bring me here today? And if that could be answered, thank you.
I'm not sure that's an answer we can provide, but you're welcome to speak to him and ask him that question.
Does Mr. Frazier represent a group, or is he an individual?
Again, I'm afraid you'll have to ask him directly. It's not a question that we're not uninterested in, but we're not going to have that kind of conversation. But I appreciate you coming down, and I'm glad that we were able to fix it. We are as frustrated as you are. We all want to have good voting records, and we're working on that toward that end. But somebody's speaking, and I would appreciate it if you would stop. Thank you. The General Assembly, as I've mentioned several times, created a law probably by people who've never experienced voter registration in any way, shape, or form, and have created a process that is very challenging for all of us. We spend an enormous amount of time processing thousands of challenges that may or may not be valid, and spend very little time proactively doing the things that we'd like to be doing, because when we're having to deal with 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 challenges in a given time frame, it does use quite a bit of our time. I'm sorry that you were inconvenienced, but I do appreciate that you took the time both to come here and talk. You might want to describe your situation to your members of the General Assembly and ask that they review this process with the professionals that have to live with the law that they passed, because that is the difficulty that we all face. We didn't create the process. We're going to talk later today, and as I mentioned to the lady that was here earlier, if you don't want to stay to watch, you're welcome to watch it on Fulton County TV, but we're going to talk about some of the things that we're doing proactively to try to get ahead of where the Secretary of State's office is currently and how we can sort of maintain things going forward. But we get interrupted a lot with a process that takes a lot of our attention.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Next person.
Good morning. I'm sorry, excuse my voice. I'm battling cancer. So, Chris Ramsey, live in Fulton County.
Raise your microphone up, sir, though, so we can hear.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. My thing is that when I first found out was back when the governor's race, we voted, and there was 2 addresses on 505, mine's 508. It was 505, and so I had ID and everything to give them, and so clearly this was a clerical error on whoever does it, because I registered in 2020 on June, but what I understand is I'm receiving mail at my address. I am, but what I don't understand is that it should have been corrected then when I was given that provisional ballot, when I voted, but however, it wasn't, and now I'm getting a letter definitely getting out of home because I'm homebound at this point, but it just doesn't make sense. It should have been corrected months ago. And when I got this letters, it was surprising to me. And then again, as other people have stated too, this is a very vague letter. You know, I understand we've heard now that you're going to revise this, but however, it shows that I had to give proof, and I have that proof. But my other concern is, how can I know for sure going forward that this problem is not going to happen again, that I'm having to fill out another voter registration? How am I not, I'm sure that this is going to be corrected and I don't have to be in the same situation again, which it never should have been to start with. Because when I registered to vote, I put 508. So however, it was a clerical error, and it seems like to me, I don't know how it works, but when you're on the keyboard, you see the numbers, you had to verify that, then you went back and put the correct address on it, but didn't remove the old mistake. So clearly, I understand I'm staff and COVID has done a lot. I teach school, so I understand that this has been a hardship for everyone, but now it's a hardship now that I'm home battling cancer and I'm having to show up because it scared me because I've been voting since I was 18, and it says here clearly I have to defend my right to vote. So clearly, this needs to be addressed. I understand you're working that, and I appreciate that, but I just find that this should have been corrected months ago when I told the poll worker that this was clearly your mistake, or not yours, period, but I mean, personally, but on the end of the board. But it wasn't done, and then now I'm getting this one being challenged. And another concern is too, just as society is, and I don't know Mr. Frazier, and I don't really care, but you end up putting his address and his everything. You don't realize that could put that person in jeopardy if someone's that could be kind of crazy and go to your house and say, look, you know, why you challenged me to vote? So, you know, it just was concerning to me. I'm not that kind of person, but, you know, you're putting that aspect, but again, I'm receiving all my mail, but I got challenged from it's a vacant lot. It's across the street. So it's not even ever been a registered residence anyway. So, but I thank you. But my concern is, how can you guarantee that when I correct it today, that this will be corrected? Because at this point right now, I don't feel like that's going to happen. So, thank you.
Shamira, would you tell him how he can validate that, verify that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So we will process your application today, and we will also mail you a follow-up letter from the hearing today, and you'll also get a precinct card in the mail. So you will receive confirmation. The precinct card, the hard copy of the card may take 4 to 6 weeks because it's mailed from the state. But for everyone that submitted an application today, my colleagues and I, we are going to process the applications, print off a paper copy of the precinct card, enclose that with the letter, and you'll also be able to check your by voter page and see that change updated as early as tomorrow. And that is something that I can assure you.
Okay, and one last thing. What's going to be the check and balance with this going to happen again? Because clearly it was a clerical error when you just switched the numbers. So, you know, just what is your going forward? What's going to be your check and balance to make sure that if there's a mistake, I'm going to correct it then, which that's evidently this is what it appears to be, that you just, that didn't happen because it was a clerical error. So, thank you.
We're going to talk about that later when we get to the organizational presentation. Could I have the next speaker, please?
LaKendra Graham, residents of Fulton County. I am here to speak on, I guess, my voting rights because I've been voting since I was 18. I've been staying at this same address since 2011. Nothing has changed from my part. The street name of my, the main street, I stay by Grant Park area. The main street changed from Confederate to United, which changed, I guess, my apartment complex name of the street. So I still receive mail at 929 Confederate Court. I still receive mail at 929 Trestle Tree Court. All of the information, 929 Court Southeast Apartment D, Atlanta, Georgia 30312. Nothing changes. No matter how you put it in, if you put it in on a GPS to navigate there, you can put it in either way. It still comes to my address. I can't see why, if someone was trying to see if I stayed at their residence or trying to challenge my residency, I'm at home. You can knock on my door. I'd be glad to invite you in to let you know that I stay there. I have other things going on. Like, this is a waste of my time. This is like something simple. I don't even know how to correct it, because if I go to if I go to somewhere and I have to write down my address, I can put it in and write it down as Trestle Tree Apartments, or I can put it down as Confederate. Sometimes the database brings up Trestle Tree, sometimes the database brings up Confederate. So I don't know how this issue can be fixed, or because the address is the same. Nothing has changed, like nothing's different. I'm there, I stay there. Every time it's time to vote, I vote. Even if I don't know exactly what I'm voting for, I still will try to get an understanding, and then I still go in and vote at the same voting poll where I'm supposed to go and vote. So I'm not understanding like how he even like just had the ability to challenge that without even having any information to even know. Because if he knew, then even just understanding and knowing, because it was on the news that the street name changed, Confederate was changed. So this is just something small that he could have just looked at and looked into the details to see I'm still there. Any information, my taxes, anything I do has either Trestle Tree or Confederate. Whichever one the company or whoever does it decides to put their address on it, or however they have my address in the system, it still is going to come to me. So I think he should look furthermore into the process and making sure that he has the proper information and the correct information before he challenged me. I have 4 kids that I have to attend to. I have other things, I have other responsibilities instead of standing here, defending myself, defending my right to vote. That's something that I shouldn't have to do. Regardless of the fact, nothing's changed. My information hasn't changed. So I don't see, it's not hard. Like literally, it is not hard. It's not hard at all. You can put it in the GPS. I'm there. Any place you want to go and find me, where my information is free to look up or to get, is there. Nothing's changed. 929 is the same. Atlanta, Georgia 30312 is the same. Only the name, Confederate and Trestle Tree.
Have you had an opportunity, you have had an opportunity to go ahead and make that change upstairs?
I am uncertain of which one to put on the application, because I have done the application various times and put Trestle Tree on it and put Confederate on it, just in case somebody was, didn't have an understanding of what was going on.
Do you have a driver's license?
Right way to, my driver's license says Confederate, the same thing. Whenever I go in to do my driver's license, it says Confederate. But when the street name changed from Confederate to United, my address changed to Trestle Tree. So if I go in there and put Trestle Tree on it.
Can I chime in? I'm sorry to cut you off. And I do apologize you had to come down here today. So what we will do, or what we are doing, is we're going to do a street maintenance with every municipality that we're doing an election for. So in your situation, of course, you should have been challenged. Your ballot is the same. Nothing that you voted for is going to be incorrect. Correct. Everything is the same. But sometimes cities do change street names, and we don't know that unless they inform us. But what we will do for doing their municipal elections is required for them to do a street maintenance. So if they've changed any street names, they'll inform us so we can update it in the system. But again, you shouldn't have been challenged. Your ballot and everything is fine. I apologize you had to come down here today, but we'll make sure, I would recommend that you use whatever the street sign says as your updated information. But we're gonna communicate with the city of Atlanta and get all that information anyway, so you'll be fine.
Okay, what's my opinion on it? There's not a street name. It says Confederate and Trestle Tree. So, but like on the main road where Boulevard is by Grant Park, it says Boulevard and United.
Yeah, we'll communicate with the city of Atlanta and get what is in their GIS, what they are actually calling it, and we'll make sure we update that, so you'll be fine.
But we need to make sure, or whatever the correction becomes, you're gonna need to change your ID to reflect the name that gets used on the voter registration, right? Because if it gets changed to either Trestle Tree or United, then your ID is not gonna be in compliance with that.
When I go to do that, it's the same in the system. And when I tell them it's Trestle Tree, they say that's not coming up. It's Confederate, it's coming up. That's why I say
At the driver's license
based on
bureau?
their database, that's what's going on.
At the Driver's License Bureau?
Yes.
Is there something we can do to be helpful in this regard?
Yeah, we'll reach out to the city of Atlanta to get that corrected.
Her problem then comes with Driver's License Bureau. So can we get is there a way we can get some alignment with them on that?
We can attempt to do so, but I don't believe you're gonna have a problem. When you do go to vote, you'll still be fine. She won't have a problem, even if it says Confederate on her actual address.
But the problem I see, she's not gonna have a problem with her driver's license, she's not gonna have a problem voting, she's not gonna have a problem getting her mail.
Right.
Her problem is the people who are going to keep challenging her because she's not gonna be removed from the voter file. And this law allows you to continuously challenge people. So unless there is an agreement or a different mind frame from doing voter challenges, if the mind frame remains the same on why I'm doing voter challenges, then people like her, and I'm not sure what will happen to the young lady who was a part of the domestic violence issue, it's going to continue to happen. And honestly, she's stepped out. The young lady here, it's going to continue happening because if you continue to use the same method to pull people, then nothing's going to change. So, I don't know what we can do in that manner, but I wish there was a way, like she's here today, she's been challenged, we show that she's been taken care of so she can't get challenged again. But if I'm not correct, according to the law, he can challenge her again tomorrow, right?
Yes, he can for the same reason. And the issue is bigger because it's not just this young lady who took her time. It's everybody on that street who has a driver's license that says Confederate that might have been in the batch of challenges because it is listed as a street that doesn't exist anymore.
And then potentially, and I could be wrong, I'm thinking about these cities that are being created where they were Atlanta one day, they're South Fulton tomorrow, or at Fairburn one day and Union City the next. Do they get to be challenged too?
The law gives any voter in Georgia the ability to challenge any other voter's ability to vote based upon what they perceive to be an inaccurate address, a lack of a residential address, or the fact that they think that the person has moved out of state. It is very broad, and it doesn't have any limitations with regard to that. But there might be some things we might discuss later that the board can do, because one of the issues, and I think it was raised by the investigator, is that we're not having enough requirements for proof. Right. And if we require the challenger to sustain their burden of proof, then they would do this due diligence rather than us going through all of this, and they would confirm whether or not these streets are have done name changes and stuff, because our staff doesn't have the ability to go check whether Confederate, or I think you said it was Tree Line, or
Trestle Tree.
Trestle Tree. And we don't have the ability to compare their driver's license with their voter registration when they are the same. There was no error here.
Right.
There was only a challenge because someone perceived that the address listed on the state's website, because everybody keeps forgetting, there's one website, it's the state's. Information goes into it, and we are able to input information, but everybody's working from one website. And so when the errors occur, the state has taken your address from your driver's license. They input it automatically. it's correct. And so, but we don't have the ability to take 4,000 addresses and streets and confirm whether or not they did a name change, but we might be able to make the challengers confirm that these streets are not subject to name change, because that's what happened.
All right, let me suggest a couple things. Maybe, Ms. Williams, if someone on staff could give this lady a contact number, and maybe there's some things that you can do to see if we can get Driver's License Bureau, our records, state records, all in a line so that you don't experience any more frustration. You're kind of a neighbor of mine, and I know exactly where you live, and I know exactly what your problem is, so I'm sorry that you're having to deal with that, and it is complicated.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
Sure, thank you for coming down. Dr. Ruth, I want to let these people continue to talk. Would that be okay? Yes. Okay, please, next speaker, and then I'll let you just go.
My name is Angela Scott. My address is 973 Azalea Hester Wharton Way, Northwest. You can hear there's a lot of room for error. My license is correct, my address, and my voter's registration card that's printed out, the address is correct. So just to further Mr. Johnson's point, the burden of proof should be more. My voter's registration is correct and my license is correct. I shouldn't have to be here today to prove my right to vote. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Next, thank you, sir, for your patience.
Hello, my name is Devron. Thank you all for your time. I live in Fulton County on Lindbergh Drive. Similar to the person ahead of me, my voter's ID is correct, my license is correct. I even got this letter to the correct address. It does say that for some reason this is 711. I've never had a problem voting before. I do think the burden of proof should be a little bit more stringent. Even those business addresses, they could have been 1099s, right? And the letter is extremely vague. I know that it may be difficult to add a paragraph on here telling us that we can register online, but I would really request that. I do find it comical that people who distrust the government trust their government data. But, as a data analyst, I run a SQL server, has, over 150 terabytes. We don't have these kind of errors. Validation is possible. And if there needs to be a department open to validate the data, that would be fine. Or if voters, I don't want to say Mr., don't want to assume your gender. But if you want to have a 95% accuracy rate before you can start applying to stop people from voting, there needs to be more burden of proof. Actually, the process in theory is okay, but to have all of your time, we're talking about taxpayer dollars now again, wasted due to the fact that no one is double checking, you're just going into some database that you don't believe is right. And then it'd be simple as, hey, just fill out this form really quick. We could have done this online, over the phone, had a contact. But I do, and I know that y'all really have no say in this, but in enforcement, I wish it is heard that burden of proof needs to be on the accuser and not everybody else. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. What do we do next? Hear from Mr. Frazier? Is that what's next? Or do we?
Sorry, you get a chance to answer questions on the board, and then Mr. Frazier
Did you want to
gets
make a statement?
Yeah, so, there's been a lot of conversation about the burden of proof, and that is very much true. And there's also a process, a step in the process that the SOS outlined in an article around the registrar reviewing the claims to determine if enough probable cause exists to further investigate. And so we have two separate things here. We have issues where there are clerical errors, anomalies, and addresses. For me, those do not constitute a challenge. They should not be part of a challenge. Whereas if you have instances where there may be issues around someone using a UPS address, and that could constitute as a better example of a challenge. I think what we will hear more of in this next half of the meeting is our approach. And I would ask Jason, Mr. Frazier, that when you have these find these clerical errors or anomalies, that they not be submitted to the department as a challenge. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's it? Okay, Mr. Frazier.
I would like to echo, a lot of the comments that I heard, and I agree. I would like to, as I've said many times, not submit these as challenges, but submit them as, can you please update these? And I took some notes on some of the comments. On Confederate Drive, I believe it was, on many of those lines, if not all the ones that said Confederate, I said, please update to United, if I remember correctly. I mean, I put the corrected address on a lot of these clerical errors. If it was 112 and they had 117, I spent the extra time, the extra legwork to try to find those and identify them, and I put them in there. And I also disagree with putting all of these in flagged invalid status. If you guys can just look at the data, look at the effort that I have put forth to try to correct a lot of these. It was on one of the columns on the Excel spreadsheet that I submitted. Please correct those. I don't want them to be a challenge. I really don't. And if you're able to identify the ones that I did not, I wasn't able to identify. It's hard to find some of these people that live in apartments because I can't find them on the homeowners, on the tax records for owning a home. But on those ones, I was able to find a lot of these and put the correct address. And I would like those to be corrected. And you guys have access to data that I don't have. You have driver's license information. You have other things. I want these to be corrected. I don't want to, as one person stated, to suppress votes. I don't want to do that. I just want the clean voter roll so that way people actually get their absentee ballots, they get their precinct cards, they go to the right precinct, and these get corrected. I would love it if you would just maybe take a step back and bounce all of these off of your GIS database, locate these people, even if you want to take a pause in this, and see how many you can find. And if you find them all, great. Correct it. And as the other gentleman said, SQL database, you can do this. I mean, it is not hard to validate addresses, but clearly that step is not happening in a robust manner today. And I hope that can be changed in the future. We have lots of systems. If I order something online, I type my address, it says, oh, did you mean this address? It ties it to these other databases to make sure there's no error. We need to be doing that so we don't drag these people down. And as far as the challenge letter goes, absolutely put on there, hey, you can change this on my voter page. A couple of the people that one person called me, another person, they were a mutual friend, had a mutual friend. I went and sat with them, explained the situation. We went on my voter page, changed it, and it was easy, but that wasn't in there. I mean, she was very angry, and the one lady I actually put in there, I think hers was 13308, and I put in my challenge, please correct it to 13309, which was the correct address. She owned a home, it was easy to find, it was a typo. Easy, take care of it. In my opinion, she should have never been sent a letter, and I was absolutely appalled when I found out she received a letter because I spent hours and hours trying to help you guys. Free labor, you're short on labor, I'm free labor trying to help the system, to make sure everyone can vote and their absentee ballot doesn't get bounced, all these other things that happen, and duplicate registrations do occur because of this, as I stated earlier. But again, I want to really echo, I'm not trying to suppress anyone, I just want clean voter rolls for a multitude of reasons. And we need a process to where if somebody finds an error, it just gets fixed. It doesn't hassle anyone. This is very costly. A quick clerical error check on the front end would help. And if one gets missed and somebody says, hey, this shows address not found in the Postal Service, can you correct this? That should be an easy, easy fix, not this painful headache for all.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion? Go for it.
One of the things that I keep hearing, and everybody's trying to do the right thing, and It's all about cleaning up the roll. And this one person mentioned earlier collateral damage. And I think that's the most appropriate term for this entire process. There are so many collateral damage and unintended consequences. Because I want to be clear that Mr. Frazier is saying he's generously trying to help us get the rolls cleaned up by submitting addresses and names and things of that nature. But are they being submitted as a, hey, here's something that you all can clean up, or is it being submitted as a challenge? Because if it's being submitted as a challenge, as the attorney has stated, there's a process we have to go through no matter what. If you send it in, you send an email to us or to staff and say, hey, I noticed all these people's address still say Confederate Avenue. Is that what happened? Is that what happened?
Yes, so if the subject line of the email says, here are my challenges, or here are my second set of challenges, please, though we have to address it as a challenge, and that's how they come in.
Thank you. And that's the disconnect. If it comes in as, hey, I have an idea, or hey, I noticed that everybody on Confederate Avenue is still listed as Confederate Avenue, then they can go in and do everything that you just said. However, if you put in the subject line in the paragraph in there that it's a challenge, then as the attorney stated, it has to be looked at as a challenge. And then you get this young lady who has to come down here about Confederate Avenue, all of these people over here. Dr. Ruth, I mean, and the other thing that I'm looking at is if this process is strictly about cleaning up the voter roll, making sure that you have a legitimate challenge, making sure that the challenge makes sense, making sure that I'm not just making a challenge because of all these names that popped up on the list. We do need to figure out a way to make sure that when we receive a challenge that there's real proof. Because I am going to use Dr. Ruth as an example for the rest of the year as to, no, in a good way though. But she is a sitting board member. And you put her, I'm not gonna say you because it was his challenge, right? Yeah, it was her entire family. And we're saying that we're doing it to clean up the rolls, but you're challenging her entire family. So that tells us that it's not being checked and it's not being verified before the challenge is submitted. Now, we all have our own ideas of what is verifiable proof. I can think just if I look at one document, oh, that's verifiable proof. But at the same time, all of these people are getting caught up in a whirlwind of having to deal with this issue. And people are very, very passionate about their ability to vote and their right to vote. And just a mere fact, if I tell somebody, I'm going to block your right to vote, whether you intended to say that or not, that's what they're feeling and that's what they're being told. So I agree, we all need to find a better way of doing this, a better way of coming up. But if it always starts with, I'm challenging them, then we're always going to be in this situation. You're always gonna have angry people. You're gonna feel attacked. You're gonna feel like people are coming after you. You're gonna feel like we think your intentions are other than what they may be. And I'm gonna have the same looks on my face too. So I think that hopefully today we come up with a way that we can work together to fix the roles and not have these people feel like they're being attacked or something is being taken from them.
Okay. We're going to move on. I don't think we're going to do back and forth, but thank you. You're welcome to speak after the meeting. Can we have a motion if we're ready to go?
Yes, I think you need to make your motion to allow the recommendations as amended for the corrections of the folks who are here. But I know the staff has been doing a great job of trying to keep up with the people who come to defend their challenge against the challenge. And all of those folks, I think you're supporting them. So just make, this list it includes them in here. And what we don't need to do is put them in a provisional status. So just to say you accept the recommendations of the staff as amended by the voters who attended today, the information from the voters who attended today.
Okay.
I just have a question. So the 2,900 that is being recommended for flagging because they moved out of state, is that correct?
Well, invalid address.
Invalid address.
Yes.
Invalid address.
Both of
Okay.
those are invalid.
Both of those are, thank you, invalid.
It's a year in the active voter invalid address deck.
Okay.
Well, hang on a minute. I just want to make sure, is your situation and that of your neighbors corrected?
Yes, so we're in the 291, correct, Shamira, where voters' residential addresses were found to be valid.
Yes, that is correct.
But we still have to address
Okay,
the
I got
people
it.
that were here.
Okay, go ahead. Then make the motion, please.
Motion to accept the recommendations of the registration department on the challenge from Jason and Frazier in the number of 4,000 with the amended by the people that were here to take care of their addresses today.
That's correct.
Properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. Thank you. The motion carries. Before we move on, I just want to flag, Nadine, I am really concerned about this issue with Confederate Avenue changing, because once we make the change, which we should make, then those folk, people who didn't change their driver's license, because the street name changed relatively recently, last 5 years? Something like that. It's
Yes,
entirely
3 years.
possible that people's driver's licenses have not changed. We might want to take some extra precautions relative to once we get all of that corrected, to just send a note to folks and say, please check your driver's license to make sure that it matches very specific to the Confederate Avenue change. And the lady that lives in Trestle Tree has a very strange conundrum that not of her making.
Yes, we'll look into that.
Because it's a housing, it's an
Right.
apartment complex that is on a street, but has its own identity within the street. Yeah, it's very weird. And not her fault, but makes her complication even more complicated. All right, moving on. I guess, excuse me? Yep, we're going to go to the operational report. How do you want to handle that? Do you want to move right into the voter challenge piece?
I recommend that we do that.
Yeah, okay. Let's just do that. You ready to go? Are you waiting on something to come up? Okay. Okay, just to keep everybody in the conversation, Mr. Wingate, they're going to resend the packet of information about the voter challenges. You may already have it before you, but just in case, it's going to pop back up in your email, so it's at top of mind.
That's fine. I do have those processes in front of me,
Okay.
unless they've changed.
I don't think so, but I just wanted you to know what we were murmuring about up here. Thanks.
While we're waiting, Shamira, can I ask a question? When we did the switch over, since there were people that came where their street was added again, or boulevard was added again, could that be a glitch in a program when information was transferred over? Was that part of redistricting or transferring things into Garvis?
To answer your question, some of the clerical errors were made by the data entry clerks. So we are aware of those double street segment types, like you said, street, road, and we are making those necessary corrections. But we have also found that in the transferring of the data into Jarvis, that some of the street names and stuff are spelled incorrectly. So we'll notify the state about those, and they'll guide us on how to make those corrections.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
while they're configuring, one thing in listening and observing and looking at various communications over the last several months, I think that it's become very obvious that the data that is being worked as received from the Secretary of State's department is totally inconsistent in a lot of cases with what we have on our registration files in Fulton County. So we have learned, or some of us have learned, and I'm hoping this will come out as we proceed here coming forth, that the new platform that is referred to as Jarvis, which is the new Secretary of State's registration system, through this process, and along with our good folks in the registrations department here, that let's hope and think that a lot of this is going to be resolved through that process. And I believe that's what we're going to hear in just the next few minutes, so that everybody who is looking at this and has been a challenger or is planning on being a challenger going forward understands what the process is. And I think that thousands of these records that have been submitted, and I am listening to that's captioned in a subject line as being a challenge, that part of this recommendation clearly becomes on those that it is a maintenance request instead of a challenge. And I don't know whether that's legally doable or not, but then if that's being worked as maintenance coming from, whatever citizen, that it's treated that way, and that people that have had to come and spend their time, which is, in my opinion, is ridiculous, have had to come down here today for these issues, that if you treat them as a maintenance item, then, I think we circumvent so much of this. So I'm hoping that clarity and submission of that comes forth here very shortly.
Thank you. Ready?
Yes, ma'am. And let me say, I'll go through this quickly because we have to relocate to a different room to complete the rest of this meeting. Now, actually. So we're gonna make this very quick. Okay, so next, we're gonna review how Fulton County maintenance of the voter rolls. Can we go to the next slide?
Wait a minute. We have to move. Do we even need to start this then? Or where are we going?
Can we move to the other room now?
You can, but it won't be available in this format.
Like
You
up-
all will be able to see it, and that will be it.
All right, do whatever you need to do.
I'll go super fast. Next slide, please. Okay, so maintenance of the Fulton County voter rolls is something that we do daily. And for the registration division, that's a task they have to do daily. But in an effort to disseminate some of the public comments and to mainly ensure that our voters' rolls are properly maintained, we will take the next measures to review our voter rolls. Next slide, please. So just so the public is aware, there is a dashboard that staff has to maintain. It's on the Jarvis. It used to be an ENET. Now it's on the SOS's Jarvis site. It tells staff daily what the counts are, how many duplicate voters, applications, vital records, et cetera. Those things have to be monitored daily and rectified daily or monthly. so that we do go get those totals daily on that website. Next slide, on that dashboard, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. So, but public commenters keep claiming that the numbers that we see on the dashboard are much larger. They keep giving quantities that we do not see on the dashboard. We also keep getting numerous voter challenges based on invalid addresses, business addresses, et cetera. And we, of course, address those. And if those that are found valid are rectified, those that are found invalid or dismissed, if we have time to review those. Next slide, please. So in regards to invalid addresses and business addresses, we have partnered with a GIS analysis company to review invalid addresses and business addresses. Any voter that we find at those locations will be contacted to rectify their voter registration information. And now with the new Jarvis system, that system allows us to flag business addresses. ENET did not have that capability, but now it will be flagged so it cannot be used for future new voter registration. Next slide, please. In regards to voter challenges, again, we do have only a 10-day window to address those. The chief registrar reviews the submissions. Those that are found invalid or dismissed. Those that are found valid, we hold a hearing. But again, when we receive mass challenges, it is difficult for our staff to stop doing their daily tasks to review each of the numerous challenges that we receive. So we will revise the letter just to inform voters that they have been challenged. We do plan to do an attachment to give them the steps of what to do. But again, that's the quickest way for us to, the letter will be revised to at least inform the voter of a possible hearing. But again, because those challenges come in such a mass number, we cannot stop the daily operations to address each one before anything goes out. But we'll make sure that letter is revised to inform the voters of that. Next slide, please. Duplicate records. We have obtained assistance from a GIS data software to go through the alpha list of voters to identify possible duplicate records. Those identifiers will be merged, and we're also looking into another avenue to look for any data entry errors, and we're exploring that at this time as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so with those combined efforts, again, we are confident that our voter rolls are properly maintained, but with those identified efforts of dashboard monitoring, invalid addresses and business addresses identification, duplicate records, and data entry errors, we will validate our maintenance and identify any possible minor errors. But that is our goal at this time, to do all those things now, to be proactive. We're very confident that the Jarvis system will help maintain the rolls better, but we're going to get ahead of that and try to look into these factors to review our voter rolls. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, but we have to vacate this room, is that correct, or do we have a few more minutes? Is anybody waiting to?
We can discuss it up there, I guess.
What's that? Right, but who are we vacating this room for?
I wasn't told who would be.
But there's nobody
utilizing
here. Is there anyone waiting to take possession of this room at this particular point in time?
people up top, but I don't think so.
There's no one in the hall. Well, I suggest we stay here until someone comes and tells us we need to leave, because it could be that somebody had a hold on the room and isn't going to use it. So let's continue. I have a couple of questions.
Well, can you pull the presentation back up? Can we still look at that? Have that up as we discuss?
Was there a question in regards to the presentation?
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep them together. I'm sinking fast. I always like to try to give context to people who are watching this so that they understand kind of what we're talking about when we have very specific sorts of questions. So some of this stuff we've covered in the past, but I'm going to cover it again. Our database has been, through the Secretary of State's office, has been managed on a system called ENET. Last year, as soon as during the redistricting process, the Secretary of State's office attempted to do, to change software programs over to Jarvis or Garvis, whatever you say. They delayed that, I think, 3 different implementation dates last year, and we're now finally in implementation. We still have to do some things to load into the system relative to our county, like known business addresses and other kinds of things that will help this thing fully function. But ENET in the prior system only identified one kind of problem, right? There's like 5 different fields now that they're going to be monitoring us. What was it previously that we got?
Are you speaking in regards to duplicate records?
Is that what ENET did,
Yes.
duplicate records? Okay. One of the things that has had us feeling like we're chasing our tail all year is that we get these reports from the Secretary of State's office and from the Department of Driver Services that don't match up with the same list that we're getting from the people who are doing the challenges. Be that as it may, hopefully what we're coming up with here is a system that will, with the help of the Jarvis system, and also with us knowing, kind of the additional work that we need to do, that we'll be able to address this in short order and have a much cleaner list. In the course of the past year and a half, roughly how many challenges have we had? Ish? 15,000, 20,000?
Number of voters or challenges?
Just challenges.
Roughly 15.
About 15,000. Did we find anybody voted illegally that we had to refer to the Secretary of State?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'll ask later.
So we're doing the cleanup job, but we're not finding that there's a sort of criminal situation going on here. We haven't found that people are voting illegally. What we've found is we've got some little bit of a messy voter roll that we need to fix, which could lead to a problem, but we haven't found that problem. One of the things I'm going to ask the folks who do the challengers, if you'd like to work with us, is to consider giving us 90 to 120 days to transition into this new system. Bring in the vendors that we're bringing in to assist us. Make sure, it's going to take Jarvis a while. We're not the ones in charge of making it as functional as it needs to be. We've got our part to play, but we still have to have the Secretary of State's office do their part to get it up and moving. And let us have time to focus on this and not focus on the priority that you have. Because the challenge that we're having is that we're spending so much of our time and our resources doing your priority that we don't have time to do our priority in the way that I think we'd like to have it done. We've heard you. We agree that there are things that need to be fixed, and we are focused on getting them fixed. And we finally have a tool from the Secretary of State's office that hopefully will align with all of our objectives in that regard. But all I can do is request that you hear us and give us the time to work. We don't have unlimited staff. We don't have unlimited time. And if we have to stop and investigate 5,000 voter challenges, or even 5,000 suggestions of fixes, those might be 5,000 things that we're not doing that would get us to a solution faster. So all I can do is make that request. I'd like to see us have till, say, I don't know, I'm just making up a number here, 1st of July to get us there. You think we'd get there in that time? And then let's have a discussion about what remains to be done. I can't enforce that, can't do anything about it. All I would say is if you want to give us a goodwill gesture, that you'd allow us the time to try to implement this new system, bring in these additional vendors that we're bringing in to help us make these corrections, then let's go back and have another pass at it and see how we've done. I'll yield the floor to Mr. Johnson. Did you say you had something to say? Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to thank the department for taking the time to have discussions around how to better address election maintenance lists and the challenges. And I think that we have a good plan that we're going to put in place, that will be put in place, and hopefully will address a lot of the clerical errors that are being sent to us as challenges. I also think it would be important to look at, you're thinking about a vendor for the issues around the GIS and validation of addresses. I would also recommend a vendor that could help us with like sorting these clerical errors. That would be helpful. These databases, like someone else said, and I often say 6 states that we're as large as, but I think now we're as large as 4 states, 800,000 pieces of data, plus, I mean, you're talking about addresses, so, and other date of birth and all of those factors, variables that are within our database. And that's a lot of information. And I know that the department is short-staffed. We have a number of vacancies, and that may be another way to expedite this process and making sure that, continuing to ensure that our voter lists are maintained accurately. So thank you.
By the way, just 1 second, Mr. Wingate, I'll call on you. Relative to the vacancies in our department, I've suggested to the staff that we consider doing some paid internships with graduating college students who we might be able to do some training on and evaluate their performance with the potential of offering them jobs when they graduate this spring. So I'm hoping that we're actively looking into that. Mr. Wingate?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To add on just a bit, it's very, very important too that we all understand and take forward that it's incumbent upon the SOS. This is their platform. This is their new voter registration system. So their ability, willingness, and inclusion about cleaning up data that are on these files so that not only Fulton, but the other 158 are also within this working guideline statewide, that it's understood clearly by all participants in this, that that's incumbent that the state do a lot of leading on this. Again, it's their system, it's their, it's their information at that central repository basis. So I think some of the communication I know that the board has received here in the last few days, there were some objectives to this, and some of the dates that were given as, say, a next point where what has been done, what new information has come about from this new Jarvis platform would be done inside or by April the 30th. Now, I don't know whether that's realistic or not. I don't know exactly I wasn't clear on what that point of time would mean, but if there's anything that can be reported and in terms of updates, status, etc., I would hope then if that be a date that something can occur, that during our March board meeting that we can get a review of that. That might at least give us an update to the chairwoman's position that July 1 or whatever some relative date might be. That's fine, but let's just make sure, since that was communicated to the board in terms of that time frame, that we that's addressed and agreed upon when we can have, let's call it, this first status or review.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so we can provide that. We already working with the GIS company, and so by the next meeting, we'll be able to provide an update of what they have so far. I agreed with the July date because we want to onboard, as Dr. Roof suggested, another company who could possibly look for data entry errors. So July would give us a reasonable time to also just complete the entire project. But we will provide an update at the next BRE meeting.
Yep, we'll do.
And I think too, Director. I'm sorry. I think too, Director, on that. I think a big part of this that we've all been involved in and have witnessed today is that we do need to have a separation of challenge versus maintenance. Because, these thousands that we're talking about, and somebody please correct me if I am wrong, but they're maintenance items. And if we can find a good way through the new registration system to correct these, then I would hope to think we don't have to bother or go to voters, with this, that then creates, good people coming down there defending something that I truly agree with. They shouldn't have to be defending. So if that can be worked in here on a legal basis, and that you can work with Mr. Frazier and whom, anybody else in that realm, in terms of anything that is being done here is worked on a friendly basis to, in fact, correct and update records as a maintenance item. I just think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, is if they do send those as challenges, that we as the board and as the registrar have I believe from the law, because it is broad, that you have flexibility to say that these are not challenges or will not be heard as challenges. They are clerical errors that the department is already investigating. And I think, it may be a good time to even reach out to the SOS to determine whether or not, because the law is vague. I mean, it's fairly broad and ambiguous, so. But the other piece of that, which is from the SOS, and I think it might have been the Secretary of State that mentioned this, was that any voter challenge must be in writing, stating clearly the basis of the challenge, and must be filed with the Board of Registrars, which should review the claims to determine if enough probable cause exists to investigate further. And I think that's where we are. Making that determination.
Yeah, I mean, basically, to me, this is like a freight train that goes in slow motion and just starts crashing into itself. We have this 10-day deadline of a very broad and vague law, and people send us stuff in any format they want to send us, and then we have time to investigate them. Now, if you were only sending us 10 names, investigating that and making determinations in 10 days is something that one is able to do. If you send us 5,000 names, that is a reorientation of work in a way that I don't think we can be successful. So I'm going to just restate what I said earlier. And restate some other things that y'all have said. We will continue to discuss the update of this plan during our operational report at every meeting. We would request, and hear what the staff has said. We had to do it pretty quickly because we may have to move at any point in time, but we're engaging a number of different consulting companies to help augment the work that hopefully Jarvis will regularize for us. And what I would ask for the people who are consistently bringing challenges is that you come to the meetings and listen to what we're doing and give us at least till July 1st to complete the work. Because if you distract us with your priority, then we won't be able to attend to our priority. And I think we all have the same priority. It's just a matter of who gets attention first. By law, you get attention first. But I think if we work together and you give us till July 1st without making us have to research thousands of names, we will be able to get to the same goal. I can only request that. And in the future, if you want to send things for maintenance, again, please don't do it between now and July 1st, because we'll be doing it. Separate out your challenges from your maintenance request, and we will handle them accordingly. But if you put them into the same thing, that's on us. That's putting a burden on us that we can't separate out easily. That's my request. Hopefully that's our request. I'm not hearing any objections to the way I've stated it.
That's a good summary from all of us.
Okay. And at the end of the day, I'm hoping by July 1st, not only will we be in a new location perhaps, but we will have a much cleaner voter roll, and this will be easier for all of us. And I'm going to remain concerned about the people who live on Confederate, now United Avenue, because I do think that there are, I think there's going to be some folks who need some new driver's licenses pretty quick. Okay, what else do we have?
Okay, so we can move into the operations report. Okay, so on page 15,
And you can take us through very, very quickly.
Okay, yeah, so we will each manager will summarize their section quickly before we get
Yeah,
kicked out of this
don't
room.
read it to us, because we can read it. So just give us the highlights.
Okay, yeah, so I'll still go around the room, and I'll start with the deputy director on page 15.
Good afternoon, Board. To summarize, for the month of February operations report, we did begin a survey of the department's county website. Essentially, we reviewed each tile or card on the website to summarize what the findings were in an effort to streamline and eliminate redundancy. We provided that annotated form to the the director as well as communications. And we are meeting with that team tomorrow is the meeting to implement those suggestions and changes. Also, as we've discussed previously mentioned before, the county is revisiting the financial audit that we went through last year in a follow-up. We've submitted all the items requested that has been put in the report. Excuse me. At this point, we've also done completed a risk assessment that was a part of the audit. We conducted an inventory of assets successfully, and now they are reviewing those items requested that are in your report, and we're waiting to hear back from the next steps. And that will conclude my summary report.
Will we receive a copy of that report, or is that something that goes to the Board of
audit,
Commissioners?
ma'am? Yes, ma'am, once it is complete. I believe the next step, once they review the financial, they will meet with us again, give us an opportunity to provide responses, and then implement that into the overall report, and then we'll get the copy that we'll send to the board.
Okay. And is this audit being conducted as a result of a specific concern, or is this a regular audit?
Yes, ma'am. Again, this was a follow-up from I believe last year, one of the Board of Commissioners requested a financial review, and this is the follow-up to that audit.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions? None? Moving on.
Absentee?
Good afternoon. Absentee, our focus is really just tracking the changes to Jarvis. Seems weekly. Some that does not apply to us, but of course we do assist the department as a whole. So registration, anything that has changed or that they're updating, we're tracking because it affects our training material and everything. Absentee attended the Gabriel, Georgia Association of Voter Registration and Elections Officials Conference in Jekyll Island. Very informative. Really good to see a large number of election officials. It's just another level of appreciation. Went over absentee ballot, open records requests, municipal elections and qualifying, and spoke with several vendors.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions? Seeing none? Moving on. Thank you.
Page 17, advanced voting.
Good morning, Board. My short summary. I also attended Gabriel conference. It was very informative. One of my highlights I want to mention is that we heard from several counties with different election, their best practices. And it was a great pleasure to converse with other counties to unite and reinforce our common goals to make sure that each of us have a fair election, efficient, transparent, and every voter have opportunity to vote. We are still reviewing the new Jarvis, and we are closely monitoring the legislative bills that were introduced, and we'll be updating our processes to reflect any relevant changes necessitated by the enactment of the new laws. And we are continuing to review our past performances for opportunities to improve our processes. We're in the process of preparing for our new move to a new elections office, and we are preparing and planning for the municipal election. Thank you. And to the back of your report, per request, you did ask for the advanced voting roundtable feedback highlights. That's for your review. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, moving on.
Page 20, administration.
Good afternoon, Board and citizens.
Under administration for the month of February, we conducted routine administrative functions such as submitting requisitions to establish purchase orders and also submitted invoices for payment. We also conducted HR functions such as processing payroll, requisitions, and we provided responses regarding unemployment claims. In regards to recruitment, we have, has been posted, processed, and has been posted for the following positions: registration officer, registration manager, administrator coordinator 1, voter education outreach coordinator lead, executive assistant, election chief. We also have a vacancy for absentee officer, but we have not determined date of hires yet. For all the positions that we have processed and have been posted, our goal is to have on board by March or latest April 2023. In regards to campaign contribution disclosure report, we had to submit the late and non-filer report for the January 31st deadline, and that was submitted to the State Finance Commission. This concludes my report for February 2023.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Just one quick comment. I know that the HR positions, these positions may have already gone out. I would just request that we cast a wider net and look at avenues or venues that we've not recruited from before, just so that we can make sure that we want to get really good people here in Fulton. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Page 21, Elections Division. I will report on the Elections Division. The IGAs to the municipalities were sent out. The deadline for them to return the IGAs is March 31st. So we are awaiting that to determine which municipal elections we have to conduct. And at that point, we will present to the board proposals for advanced voting locations, et cetera, and present the IGAs themselves when they are received on the meeting following the March 31st deadline. Okay.
Any questions about that? Remember, this is about who's going to conduct municipal elections. We're chewing our way through that. Everybody, yeah, move on.
Okay.
All right.
Page 21, I will also report on Election Day. Our elections officer has conducted roundtables. There was another one scheduled for new clerks and new managers. We will also be creating a poll watcher and poll worker observer video as part of training, just so that we can work well in 2024. So we're getting ahead of that. So our election manager, or the officer, and communications is working together to create that video, which will be part of training, and we will provide that to you when it's completed.
Thank you. This is excellent.
I have one question.
Okay.
Have you all already updated the manual for using Jarvis?
No, the SOS is still making some tweaks to Jarvis. They've been very active in doing that. So once all of that is finalized, we will get that comprise that information and put it in our new manual. But we're waiting for everything to be completed before we move forward.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
On page 22, Finance.
Good afternoon. For the finance report, as you're aware, in the BOC meeting on the February 1 BOC meeting, they asked for a reduction to the elections municipal budget to match the 2021 actual municipal election expense plus an increase of 10% to 2023. So in February, we worked to reduce the municipal elections budget for the November general election and the December runoff. So that has been reduced as required by the board. So the current proposed November election municipal budget is $5.7 million, and the proposed runoff budget for December 2023 is $2.45 million to match what was required by the board. The other thing we've worked on is the audit, as our deputy director mentioned, we've been working on providing the contracts, the vendor invoices, and everything that the auditors have requested. So that's been a big part of what we've been doing. And of course, when the IGAs come back at the end of March, we will update any budget changes that become necessary as a result of whatever cities agree that Fulton will conduct their elections. So that concludes the finance report.
I have a couple of questions, and we don't have to get into too much detail now. But since the Board of Commissioners didn't like the two different ways we shaped up how to engage on this election cost issue, and then just gave us a number, how are we making those reductions in a way that won't impact our ability to conduct the elections?
Well, we met as a team, and each manager has made reductions in their divisions. And we will, because we're all dedicated to this process, we will make sure that it happens at this point. But we should be, and like I said, so we are working as a team to ensure we can cover everything that has to be covered without jeopardizing the election.
Where is the bulk of the reduction coming? Because it's a pretty big number.
We reduced staff, honestly, temp staff that were to onboard. Unfortunately, that would put more work on the managers themselves. But that's the bulk of the reduction was staffing. We had to not allocate as many advanced voting locations for the upcoming elections like we could possibly have. So those type of changes were made.
Okay. You know, one question relative to that, like suppose a city was willing to pay to have their usual voting locations, which would cause the cost to go more. Is that something we could do? I think about a city like Atlanta in particular that just, has so many voters, although they don't have a huge election this coming year, do they?
They have a school board election.
Just school board,
Yes.
okay. Okay, well, okay. But it's an at-large. It's at-large. Okay. Never mind. We'll discuss that in a couple more years. Go ahead.
But to take that, I'm sorry, just to piggyback on your remark, to take that further, if the city should decide they want like 2 early vote locations, and they decide to pick up that, because they're going to pick up the tab, does that has to go before the commission to be okayed?
We'd have to research that with legal and see how that falls. Yeah, we'd have to do some research on that if they were to request that.
Okay, because I know 2 cities that would like 2 early vote locations for municipalities. They're long and wide. So, okay, thank you.
So I just, like to be clear. The commission reduced the amount, so we're having this whole conversation about whether we should do elections or cities should do elections. So in that vein, the commission reduced the amount for the department to conduct the elections, right? So then, now you're having to look at, cities are already saying that the elections department is inefficient and all these other things, that they're not doing a great job. Now you're having to reduce staff, reduce locations, so residents won't see, or residents may not see that your budget was reduced. All they know is we had 2 early voting locations before, now we only have 1. Or you may have a situation where a city says, why, or East Point, for instance, why isn't the East Point Library open for early voting, when the answer is we had to reduce the budget so we can't afford to have enough staff. Or if you keep the early voting locations open, they may not have enough staff to properly staff that location, so lines may be long. So we get into a situation where it's creating an atmosphere that you may not be able to work at your optimal level, but you're still responsible for doing optimal work. Okay, I just wanted to ask that question on the record, that's all.
Okay, other questions, comments relative to that? Seeing none, continue.
Okay, I'm sorry. Supplies and logistics. I will report on supplies and logistics. Our equipment manager has reached out to all the facilities in advance just to let them know tentatively to reserve dates if we do the municipal elections. Not all, I'm sorry, just the ones that we know for sure that we will conduct in elections. He is actively with information systems working on planning our move to Election Central, just to make sure we know we have a complete inventory of what's going in, what's going out, exactly where things will be housed. So we are working on as a project. We do not have a move-in date at this point, but we are planning ahead to make sure that when we do move, everything is categorized, has chain of custody, covered, everything of that nature.
Okay. Continue.
Page 23, registration.
Good afternoon. In the month of February, the Registration Division primarily worked on tracking changes that were submitted as challenges. We made those updates, and we also worked with our director, Ms. Williams, to put in different processes for maintaining the voter rolls. We have met with the vendors that will be assisting us with this process. And we're also working, taking a look at the municipal street audits before we send out the list of registered voters to the municipalities. That will conclude the monthly operations report for the Registration Division.
All right, questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Voter ed.
Good afternoon, board members. I also attended the Gabrielle conference, and it was great to meet others who are doing outreach in education. Also, as always, making our connections and contacts, working on events, and as I serve as the legislative liaison, attending delegation meetings and watching hearings to keep track of any of the bills that may be impacting our office, as well as conducting deputy register training. And then I've worked with our external affairs department to update all of our brochures, but we're waiting until after the General Assembly is over in case there may be updates to our work. And so that's what we've been working on. Thank you.
Can you, and I apologize if this puts you on the spot, but do you have at your fingertips what bills are still alive post crossover day?
Yes, SB 222 and SB 129, and they were both heard in committee, one last night and one today is Thursday, so one Wednesday night, and yesterday was SB 222 that passed out of committee, but the House submitted a substitute, as well as with SB 129 that was passed out of committee on Wednesday. And they also submitted a substitute. I did send an email to the executive assistant for the chair for governmental affairs from the House side to get those substitutes. I do have a paper version of SB 222 that passed on yesterday, but they still have not updated them online. And hopefully, we do have a Fulton delegation meeting today. So maybe prior to the delegation meeting, we will have the updates with the substitutes.
And on those subs, were they substantial subs or were they minor revisions? Do you know offhand? I mean,
So
sometimes they just strip and replace, you know?
For SB 129, those were additions. So SB 129 basically, along with the law that allows employees to be able to vote on election day. So the purposes of SB 129 is to do the same thing, giving an employee an opportunity to be able to exercise their right to vote during advanced voting.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was added with the substitute were that the language from some of the previous bills pertaining to the audit. So bringing back a audit, the risk limited audit after primary and general election. And then there was another piece that was added. That's why been waiting to get the update but I know those were the main things that were discussed. And for SB 222, nothing that really impacts us because I don't think that our county was going after grants to give to elections, but SB 222 basically clarified the original intent of SB 202 per the chairman of no third-party funding being able to be given directly to a county for the purposes of helping with the elections department. And then it also added the state board having a separate line item in the budget, having the Senate chair, where the Senate actually elect the chairperson of that board each year during the general session to be nonpartisan, of course, and then it also provided funding for them to have their own investigator as well as a executive director. And so those were some of the changes from SB 222. So I'm continuously, Ms. Williams can let you know, I probably call her every day like, this changed, here we are, here's something else. And so just continually trying to track, because I know now that we're, I think, at day 35, things are moving more quickly now.
Yeah, they are. Thank you. That's a really good report. I will bring to people's attention that there is some kind of substantial change going on with the State Board of Election that is not entirely transparent. Yeah. They're receiving their own budget, they're receiving their own staff, and the chair at the Gavrio meeting indicated that they were going to take on some enhanced roles. That what that actually means is unclear. But based on the meeting that I attended in March, there could be that they may do a little bit more about sort of the regulatory stuff. I mean, ultimately, they may even be the people that we go to for a resolution on the challenge issue. I don't know. I mean, the law is the law, but getting some implementation that becomes consistent across the county. So it could be a good thing, although I thought that was the role of the Secretary of State, so it does concern me.
And I think there will be with that SB 222 with the grant piece, they will be also overseeing, because the goal is that the grants will go to the state, and then the state will be responsible for distributing to the counties.
Yeah, right. Okay. Other questions, comments? All right.
Okay, and as the final portion of our report, we have added a public comment response section, so we can address anything that happened prior to any public comments. But at the time of this report, from the March 1st BOC meeting, there was no public comments in regards to elections, so there's nothing to report at this time. But we will, as we address, if we receive public comment from this meeting and from BOC, we'll start having a report of fact versus fiction included in the ops report.
Okay. All righty, is that it?
Yes, ma'am, that concludes the operations report.
For the board, do you have anything you would like to say, or shall we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none. We're adjourned. Thank you.